It's time for
Okay.
another chilling episode of Marco's Mysteries.
Oh boy, here we go.
Come and learn with Marco all about a mystery.
Did
Corri, give
you
me a
did
theme
you make
tune.
sure this time that like it is a mystery and there isn't like if you look at another page, it's solved?
Whoa, 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 whoa. What do
I'm
you mean?
just I'm
What do
just
you mean this
wondering.
time?
There's just been a couple of instances where
Two,
you've claimed
180 odd episodes, right?
that would be a
Twice.
couple, wouldn't it?
Twice in 4 years, I've talked about mysteries which may have been solved.
And one of them happens to have been like 2 months ago, so it's fresh in my mind. I just want to make sure.
Recency bias. That's all that is.
Recency bias.
My hit rate
Yes.
is excellent.
Okay. Hit me with your mystery.
Yeah, can I get a little theme tune? Make a theme tune
A
for
theme,
me.
like a mystery theme tune.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, very nice. All right. So, won't you please, listeners, meet Lars?
Lars.
Lars Mittank or Mittank, or well, he was German, right? Or may still be, for
Oh,
all we know.
okay. All right.
Let me talk to you about Lars. Born in 1986.
Oh, he's a year younger than me.
And there you go. German national, lived in a town called Itzehoe in Germany. To all intents and purposes, the most normal guy I think you could probably wish to come across. Great relationships with his family. Uh, in a relationship himself, had a girlfriend. Nothing really remarkable about Lars. Just your average everyday German guy.
Okay.
So come with me then to 2014, if you don't mind,
Mm,
where Lars is joining some of his old school friends on a holiday to Bulgaria. Okay.
sure.
Lars and five of his crew are in Bulgaria, and the holiday is off to a pretty poor start. Okay.
All right.
He joined a handful of his school friends in a place called Varna in Bulgaria, where he and his friends stayed at a resort on the coast of the Black Sea, a Golden Sands resort. And the holiday started badly when, at one point early on in the trip, Lars found himself involved in a brawl. He found himself involved in a bar fight
Oh dear.
uh, about one of, so fucking prosaic a topic about football, right?
Sure. And
Uh,
I'm
got
imagining
in
it, all the like Bulgarian bar guys looking like Miro, so this sounds like a bad start.
Possibly built like fucking like a brick shit house.
Right.
Super, super, super strong. But anyway, look, they got arguing about which fucking which football club was the better. Mittonk supported SV Werder, whereas the other four were Bayern Munich fans, and they ended up in a heated argument.
Okay.
Lars left the bar before his friends, and they claim not to have seen him again until the next morning. Okay.
Okay.
Now, Lars turned up the next morning back at the Golden Sands Resort and told his friends that he'd been jumped, told his friends that he'd been beaten up.
Oh dear.
Um, Now, again, this different reports vary here. Lars told his friends that he'd been attacked by a group of men who were friends with the guys that he'd argued with originally.
Oh boy.
Uh,
Okay.
some of the friends said that the guys who he'd argued with the other night had paid some locals to duff him. Um, he saw a doctor. He was quite badly beaten up. The doctors found that he'd injured his jaw quite badly and ruptured an eardrum.
Ooh.
And Lars was advised by local doctors to stay in Bulgaria to get treated for his eardrum injury before he could be cleared to fly back to
Sure, that
Germany.
makes sense. Yeah.
With me so far?
Yeah, totally. Right on.
Cool. So Lars's friends were all adamant that they all stayed behind with him, okay? But Lars was
Uh,
like, it's cool, don't worry. He'd been prescribed antibiotics. I nearly did an accent then. Did
you
you see the
nearly
fight?
did an
I nearly did a German accent,
wrestling.
but I did. Yeah, I thought, no, I can't pull that off, so I'm not going to bother. He
Can't
was
pull that off.
Lars.
Who are you? What's going on here? I have
I don't know.
concerns.
I've changed this week. Anyway, listen.
Hmm.
Like I said,
Okay.
Lars was prescribed antibiotics, and he stayed behind on his own. All of his friends checked out, and his friends all flew back to Germany.
Okay.
And Lars checked in on his own to a different hotel, a nearby hotel called Urbana, for a night to let his antibiotics kick in. I don't know.
Sure.
But here's the thing, right? Whilst there alone on the 7th of July, Lars started behaving super fucking erratically. Okay.
Okay.
Um, there is CCTV from his hotel captured of Lars just behaving just like an absolute lunatic, pacing up and down
Mm.
corridors, peering out of windows.
Kind of an Elisa Lamb type situation.
Exactly this.
Mm.
That was exactly the name I was just reaching for. Um, you know, focusing really intently on items on the walls, looking at pictures, looking out of windows, hiding behind corners, hiding in a lift, hiding in an elevator, just being a proper kind of weirdo, right? Um, so Lars was due to fly home on the 8th of July, the day after his friends. Okay. And Lars made it to the airport. He made it to Varna Airport on the 8th of July. He had a flight booked. Lars texted his family, texted his mother, just to, just to keep her abreast, just to let him know that he'd made it to the airport. Um, whilst there, he met up with a doctor at the airport just to kind of keep an eye on his injuries, to check up, and it would be then that he would be told whether he could fly or not.
Okay.
The doctor cleared him, told him he could fly, but this is when things kind of reach a head. The doctor claims that this is when, after he told him he could fly, Lars started to look really strange and nervous, started to look really panicked, started to come at him with loads of kind of questions about the antibiotics he'd been prescribed.
Mm.
There was building work going on at the airport at the time. And while Lars was in a consultation room with the surgeon, the doctor says that a construction worker entered the office, and this spooked Lars, completely freaked him out. He's quoted as being heard saying things like, "I don't want to die here. I don't want to die. I've
Mm.
got to get out of here. I've got to leave." And he did. He got up and
Okay.
left the airport. Okay,
Mm. Wrong way,
fled,
buddy.
fled the fucking airport, left behind all of his luggage, left behind all of his possessions, including his passport.
Mm. That's gonna be a problem.
And this is where the case gets fucking super interesting, right? Because there is
Okay.
video of him, which I'll send you. I will send you
Okay.
this video of
Please
Lars,
do.
literally just walk running out of the hotel.
Out of the
Sorry,
airport?
out of the airport, yes. And uh, leaps a fence,
Hmm.
runs to the airport towards a forest which surrounds the airport. He climbs the fence, he runs away, disappears from the camera, disappears into the forest, and CoRri, he is never seen again.
Just how big is this forest?
Not especially, but here's the thing. After he jumps that fence and after he leaves
Yeah.
the airport, that is the last anyone ever sees of Lars.
No body, no but nothing
Nothing.
in the
Nothing
forest. No, he's
at
just
all.
never turned up.
Nope. He has never, ever, ever, ever turned up. That's the last he's been seen. Um, like I said, the doctor has given interviews about this. It's the Dr. Costa Kostov. She says that Lars was saying things like, "I don't want to die here. I've got to get out of here. I have to escape. I have to leave." Um, uh, there are obviously there are theories left, right, and center.
Sure.
Has the medication been giving him paranoia?
Hmm.
Um, but
But that
that
would only
we can
last for so long, right?
well, yeah, exactly. Plus, the doctor claims that Lars hadn't been taking his meds anyway,
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, he was probably
and
too paranoid to take the medication. Like this feels
that
like
makes
some
sense.
sort of head trauma or whatever that
There you
caused
go.
this. Yeah.
Antibiotics aren't going to give you paranoia. Aren't going to
No.
give you. I wouldn't have thought anyway. But it seems as though concussion, perhaps delusion,
Hmm.
perhaps. Now, in the months and years, because the case is still open, right? In the months and years after Lars's disappearance, there have been people who claim to have seen him. In 2019, in Germany, in Dresden, a truck driver claimed to have picked up a hitchhiker. He subsequently learned about Lars's disappearance and became convinced that that was Lars that he'd picked up, that it looked a lot like him. Lars's family have said that they think he's still out there. They think he might have lost his memory. They think he might be still alive. Lars's mother, Sandra, is very active on social media, trying to, keep Lars in the public consciousness.
He knew, like, when he was at the airport, he knew who he was, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, like, if there's some sort of amnesia situation, it would have been later. It wouldn't have been immediate, which I don't know if that's a thing, an onset of amnesia later on or something like that. But
I don't know, man. I don't buy that.
Yeah, like that doesn't feel like necessarily a thing. What else? Go on.
Well, look, whenever there's a high profile kind of unsolved disappearance like this, I'm thinking like Madeleine McCann or something similar.
Mm-hmm.
The same theories tend to kind of come in. Oh, human trafficking.
Sure. Yeah.
He
unlikely given the circumstances.
Well, yeah, considering he was like a pushing 30 fucking bloke.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Who left of his own volition.
Who left of his own accord. Yeah.
Yes.
Again, like I said, many more sightings. There were claims that he'd been seen in Brazil in 2016. Let me see. Years and years of investigation from Germany's kind of feds, the BKA, Germany's kind of federal criminal police office. He's still being searched for out there, and every so often, you know what I mean, new theories come to light, new amateur kind of detectives or sleuths will pipe up. But they are, the prevailing theories seem to be, was it intentional? Did he decide he was going to vanish?
Right. Like, did he like set up, oh, I got beat up by some people and now I'm gonna act crazy and run off.
Yeah. So, was it a kind of a faking his own death kind of affair? Is he still out there? Is he on the streets? Is he homeless? Has he died subsequently since? But the magnetic thing about mysteries like this for me is when there is just nothing.
Right. Like there should be some indication. We live in a time of like CCTV everywhere. Like if there was like a body that was found, certainly people would have identified it to this active case. Like it's not easy to disappear in this time in history.
Post 2000, I think.
Right.
Any kind of notions about going off grid, forget it, man. You can't do it.
Yeah, it's more or less impossible.
Again, in the same kind of vein as the McCann story, high profile unsolved disappearances like this have such a lot of scrutiny on them. The eyes of the fucking world tend to kind of look at these cases. You can't hide a body for that long. You can't well,
I mean, like you could, obviously you could. I mean, you could. That's not unheard of, right? Like even let's look at your method, for example. It isn't unheard of that people and another one of your cold opens from the past. It is not unheard of for people to have a body in the fridge.
That's true. That's true.
If somewhere his corpse has been, taken, surely it could be, it could be buried in someone's backyard. There's any number of things that like you wouldn't necessarily look for someone. So like the idea of a body never turning up but him being dead is totally plausible. But the thing about that I think throws me is that because it seemed like he, assuming he didn't fake it, had some sort of TBI, right? Some sort of traumatic brain injury or whatever that caused him to do this, then there'd be no reason for someone to murder him, right? Like,
that's
any
way
that he would have died would probably be like hit by a car, starved to death, froze to death, something like that, where you would have like a body in the street or things of that nature. So like
the chain of events doesn't ring true, does it? It doesn't kind of gel, doesn't coalesce properly.
Like certainly the soccer fans weren't like so pissed that they like ran into him again and were like, let's murder him this time.
Yeah.
So unless he like lied about what they fought about or whatever. But to me it seems like if this is like a head trauma thing.
Mm.
And he suffered severe long-term brain damage that changed him permanently, not just for a period
Yes.
of time, then there's every reason to think that, you know, yeah, he probably is somewhere. He is probably some small town's crazy person who, you know, everyone, you know,
Great,
is
great
used to
shout.
seeing
Yep.
and giving a some food to, and they go, there's that German guy or whatever, and
Yeah.
like nobody is so online or whatever that they know that people are looking for him. You know, he grew a beard, whatever, and
Mm.
he's just like chilling somewhere, you know?
My instinct is that he, like you said, some sort of cranial concussion-based kind of confusion type fugue
Right.
led to him legging it from the airport in the grip of psychosis.
Right.
And I think he met a sticky end in the woods.
So you think he's still in the woods outside the airport?
No, no, as in I think he might have died in the woods. I
That's what
think
I
the
mean. Like, yeah,
elements
you
or
think
animals
he's,
or
and they
yes,
just
I think
never found
yeah, I do.
the
I reckon
body?
he's in the woods. Tell what I'm
Okay.
gonna do right now, right? I'm gonna look
Yeah.
on maps. I'm gonna see how
Yeah,
big the
see what
fucking
that, yeah,
forest
see what
is.
the, because I think that makes a difference. Because I'm thinking, like, you know, this is a forest that's like between a city and an airport or whatever. And I'm like, how
Yeah.
would you not find him? That it cannot be that hard to
Varna
look through
Airport area. This
a
is podcast
forest.
sleuthing, mate. This is the kind of fucking shit we need to be doing.
Right. Yeah.
All
Back off
right, here we
TikTok.
go.
We got this one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's just put the old satellite view on here.
let's see how big this forest is and whether our man could
Yeah.
just
All
disappear into it.
right.
Because yeah, I was picturing something like small here, and I'm like, why wouldn't they have just like gone in and followed him and looked for him?
Uh, it's not big at all.
Okay.
Like at all. Let me show you this. Let me show you this. Let me show you this.
I think I have to allow you to do this. Does seeing it change your
Seeing
mind
it,
at all, or you think they're
yeah, it
just
does. It does.
bad
It
at
does.
searching? Okay, go ahead and share
Look at this. Look at this fucking.
it.
Can you see that tiny bit of forest?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's like forest is very much overstating this. For
Oh,
those of
well, there's that
you,
down there, I guess.
there's nothing around there that's big enough that you wouldn't be able to search it in a day, in a
No,
couple
certainly not.
hours for that
Certainly
matter.
not.
I mean, yeah, for those of you listening and not watching this, there are a few patches of trees that could constitute a very small forest if you're not used to being around actual forests, but they
It's a
are,
thicket, isn't it? It's a
yeah, it's
copse.
thicket, right? It's certainly not something that you
A
wouldn't be
thicket.
able to walk through and find a body
Hmm.
in at all. Like that, you would have to be very bad at searching to not be able to cover all of this with like 10 people over the course of 5 hours.
Well, that's blown it wide open. That's
It's
really
like if he died in there, like let us go. Somebody buy us tickets to Bulgaria and we'll go find him. Because you know, maybe he ended up in a different forest. Like that's what I'm saying. Like the idea that a body could end up somewhere and it's never been turned up is certainly not beyond the pale. Like he could have booked it from there, and who knows, maybe he's in a
the
lake. You know, there's any number.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I don't
Yes,
even know
yes,
where
yes.
Bulgaria is, to be honest with you. But I assume that it has geographical features that are dangerous in one way or
Uh
another.
Bug area. So go above Greece, go above Turkey a little bit.
Oh,
You're in kind of southern in the Mediterranean and South Serbia kind of way, that kind of way.
okay, gotcha. It's kind of an area that's a little bit of a
If
like
he'd
blank
if he
space to
drifted
me.
into Serbia, he's fucked.
Like maybe that's the thing. There's all these like places that he could have ended up. Like
Yeah.
so he's probably not in the trees outside the airport, but that doesn't mean he didn't
No,
end up in some other, you
I've
know,
re I recant
place.
that theory.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's one of two things. Either he died in some, you know, spot that is
Yeah.
more difficult to find people, or yeah, he's like just some, you know,
He's
unhinged
a
guy
yeah,
in a town that nobody questions.
he's a transient. Oh, that's
Yeah.
German
Especially if
Klaus.
he's
Yeah, yeah.
especially if he's like paranoid, he's got like paranoid delusions. He wouldn't tell people his real name and things like that. Like
Perforated
there's
eardrum, possibly partially deaf by now.
right. Absolutely. Yeah. Like there's so many things to that he could really basically to me 50-50 could be alive or dead
Mm.
based on these
You,
facts.
if you're listening and you're German and you've got like fragmented kind of memories of how you got to be
Mm,
where you are, you might be Lars.
that's a good point.
I just want to let you
Incredible.
know you could be Lars Mittank. So have a
Mm,
think about it. Ring your mum.
yep.
Look for your birth certificate. It could be you.
Could be any of us.
Could be me.
Might be. Love that. Good mystery, Mark.
Excellent. I do love a mystery. In fact, I might maybe my cold opens are all going to be mysteries from now on
Mark's mysteries.
because I like
I'll
them. I
have to
like them a
work on
lot.
your theme song then.
You do, yeah. I deserve better.
Hey, I liked my spooky tones, but
It was
I
good.
could I could definitely go farther with a little work.
Come on, mug. Says stupid dad.
Uh, is it I was about to say Thanksgiving. Is it Father's Day there or no?
Sure is.
It is. Didn't
Ah,
even mention it.
one doesn't like to,
I was like, "How was your day?" And you're like, "It was good. People were nice."
Yeah.
You mean they
Well, I mean,
celebrated you?
I got look.
Okay.
Knowing anyone who knows Mrs. Lewis,
Hmm.
she ain't one to celebrate me, right? Um, I think I'm doing well if I can get her to reply to me,
That's a good start.
let alone. But yes, to answer your questions, yes, it is Father's Day here. Yes, I have been celebrated,
Very
and I am
nice.
feeling validated and seen. Having kids was the best thing I ever did. I love
I
them.
love that. Big fan of
True.
that. And I
Yeah.
like your kids. I haven't met your kids. I will say you posted, a new profile picture with your children today, and I feel fairly confident that at this point they are both taller than me.
Owen, possibly yes.
Like that, it's just looking, I'm like they're up to your face basically, and I don't come
Yeah,
to your
sure.
chin. So I think
Yeah, they
safely.
pretty yeah, put it like that. Yeah, they probably both are. At 10, um, oh man, Owen does some irritating shit sometimes.
Hey.
He's in the habit right now of whenever I walk past him, he'll smack my ass really hard and shout "Yeah," which
See, me and your kids would absolutely get along because I do the same shit to Keo all the time, to the point where sometimes he like hustles away from me with like his hands over his ass so that I can't slap it.
just smacks my ass. How does he go? Yeah, and just smacks my ass.
Where did he get this from? Is this a reference to something or just, you know?
Uh, well, he spends every waking hour on YouTube Shorts.
Oh, I always
Because
wonder,
the
like,
one,
well, this is the thing. Obviously, I don't do the TikToks and the things like that. Like, so
mm,
those little like videos like don't appeal to me at all. And every time I see those, I'm like, who watches this? Who wastes their time with these shorts? Because all of the YouTube
yes,
videos I watch are like 4 hours long. Like, I kid you not, Mark, this week I watched a 4 hour video about why the Star Wars hotel failed. I
oh,
don't like Star Wars. There's no reason I would have ever been to that hotel, but did I watch that entire video? You bet your fucking life I did.
wasn't it like 8 grand a night or something like that? There's your
It
fuck. That's why the
So this was one of the crazy things about it. This girl who did this video actually did stay at it at her own expense. It wasn't like, paid for by anyone. She's an influencer. She paid her own way. And she was saying that one of the crazy things about this was that like you couldn't know how much it cost. You had to actually like call them, and then you had to have like dates in mind and the exact number of people who would be in your party. And
oh my
then they
god,
would be like, yes or no, that date is available. And for that many people. And if it is, then they would give you a number based on that. So it might have been like there's peak seasons, there might have been off seasons. Like there's no way for you to know. You can't
So
mess around with the number of people. Like, well, what if there's only two of us? Or like,
completely
anything
opaque
like that.
pricing. Surely that, how is that
Completely.
legal?
I mean, I don't know. I guess it is. You don't have to have online services or whatever. I have no idea how this kind of thing works, but completely opaque pricing. And then like everything was like an add-on to it. And one of the things
Sure,
that
yeah,
she
yeah,
was
yeah.
talking about was like how the only thing she elected to add on to it was like a photo package. Like, and you've been to Euro Disney. I assume they do the
Yeah, of
same
course.
thing here where there's like all the people in the park taking pictures or whatever of you. You come in and they're like, oh, take a picture here and
Yeah,
we'll
yeah, yeah,
put
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Tinkerbell
yeah,
in
yeah.
your hand or whatever.
Yeah.
And so they were supposed to have those all over this like hotel. And she said she never once saw one of those people. So she paid like
Wow.
$190 or something like that. And
Fuck all.
no one ever took
Well, there
a
you go.
picture
This
of her.
this
It's wild. Like honestly, if you're the kind of person who puts on a YouTube video in the background while you're working or whatever, and you like those long kinds of YouTubes, I recommend watching this video. Just search like Star Wars hotel, and it'll be like the first thing that comes up in your recommendations because it is truly wild. It's like genuinely one of my favorite movies is the movie Austin Land, and the premise of this is this woman played by Carrie Russell goes to like an Austen experience, a Jane Austen experience.
right,
Uh,
right, right.
but she's like not rich. And so she gets like the like, poor people package essentially. So like everyone else is having a great time, but she's being treated like shit the whole time because of her
Right.
not having enough money to pay for the good package. And it's like this in real life with this Star Wars
Well,
thing. It's insane.
I mean, you've just sat through like 4 hours on this, so
Yeah.
we won't kind of go into this. But it didn't. Am I right in saying that this was a hotel without windows? There was screens in
Yeah.
place of windows.
Yeah, there's no windows in this, and they have like an atrium thing that's supposed to be like, oh, this is where you acclimate to the planet, which is basically there for claustrophobic people
Yeah, yeah.
because it causes people to panic to be in a building with no rooms in it. So they had to make like a fake outside space so with like trees in it and stuff like that to make it
My
so that people
God.
wouldn't have panic attacks being locked inside of this thing with no windows for 3 days. It's
Mm.
so crazy. Like, oh man.
And the extortionate prices and the expectation that you'd have to interact in character with people in
Right.
character.
Yeah.
Uh, I
And like
mean,
it's supposed to be like oh, it's like being on a cruise ship or whatever, but like the rooms were like tiny and like, so you're paying all this money and she like compared it to what a room on an actual cruise ship would be like for the same amount of money. And it was like you would basically get a deck of the boat and you get
yeah.
like tiny bunk beds in this thing. Like, oh, it's so bananas. Big recommend watching this video.
Do you know you've actually kind of got me curious? I mean, I don't
Well,
want to
you're a
sit down
background
for
person.
four
Just
hours
put
of
it in,
this.
yeah, put it on while you're working. And
I am a
it's,
background guy. Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
it's
You're right. You're right.
truly a wild
I
watch.
mean, was the ambition to kind of make it aspirationally priced to kind of price out casuals? So
Mm,
you've got kind of an experience level uh, kind of product that they can push out. But oh no, no, no. None.
yeah,
I think the question is more how did it stay open as long as it did?
right. Yeah. It's just everything about it is the wrong choice
Mm,
on every possible level. So I think trying to reason it out is like
mm. Yeah, 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 yeah.
impossible.
How the heck did we get to this topic then?
Owen watching a lot of YouTube
There you go.
and
Yes.
slapping you on the ass as a result.
And I can confirm from dictionary.com, the slang gyat is an exclamation used to express excitement or shock, especially in reaction to seeing large buttocks or a voluptuous woman.
Oh, well, he's kind of complimenting you there.
I'll
He's
take it. I am known for being voluptuously
yeah,
buttocked.
he can't resist that peach, you know?
That's right. Mysteries, big ass. I got a great ass.
Um, So great. Glad to hear you were feted today. Got your ass slapped
I
and
did.
whatnot.
Yeah.
Wonderful to hear.
Got to pick my dinner.
Oh, what'd you pick?
Yeah. I picked my favorite dinner.
Uh, was it?
Not burgers.
I was gonna say it's burgers
Uh,
or oh man, I feel like I should know what your favorite is.
I wouldn't be surprised if you don't.
Okay, what is it?
It's very pedestrian. Sausage, egg, and chips. Fucking
Oh,
so nice.
sausage, egg,
Yeah,
and
fried egg.
chips.
Fry up a couple of eggs.
Oh, like on a platter together, like a
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah, 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 yeah. What
I got
did
it
you
now. I
think
was
I
like,
meant?
what are you, I don't know. I was trying to figure out what do you do with the sausage and the eggs? Like,
Oh, I see.
are
Right.
they,
No, no, no. You
are
simply cook
they
them up and fucking
That's
eat them.
delightful. I love that. I'm very excited because I've now taken to ordering my dinner ahead before starting to record the
I did
podcast.
see a little post on the socials about this.
Yeah,
Somebody's got a
so
little Taco Bell
got
coming,
a little
yeah?
Taco Bell on the way after this, and I'm like
Ding dong.
very stoked on it.
Nice, nice, nice,
Gonna
nice,
be
nice.
looking forward to that this entire
Mm.
time. But just as a heads up to everyone, last week I said that Joag mailings and fan cave and whatnot were coming last week, but I'm sure a lot of you were like thinking further ahead than I was, and we're like, that seems like folly. You're putting your dog to sleep this week. It was folly. I was too sad to do any things this week. I did no things. I just was sad all
Mm.
week instead. Um,
Understandably.
yeah. So those will come next week. Well, I'll still be sad, but like hopefully not catatonically sad.
Oh, no, is that the
Oh
degree to
man,
which
I'm telling you, like in the 17 years that we've known each other, neither of us have cried so hard ever. And like 5 of my family members, including my father, have died in that period of time. It
mm,
was truly just the
tiring? Sounds
worst,
exhausting.
exhausting. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely exhausting. Went in there for the whole procedure and everything, and the people were so sweet, so nice. The vet was like rubbing my back and consoling me and all these kinds of things, and we were both just like an absolute mess. And then we came back and we buried him in the backyard and everything, and trying to sort of process things in our own way. I had made sure to like put away all his stuff beforehand so that it wasn't
That's a
like we
great,
came
great,
back
great call.
and
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, now we have to get rid of his things or whatever. I like boxed it all up beforehand, and I was like, let's go to like a pub quiz or something. And my husband was like, I would like to just garden and cry, please. Um, and so, he did that. He sat, by the grave and hung out for a while. He like when we went to bed, he was like, maybe I'm gonna go get his heartbeat dog, which was like this little dog with a heartbeat that he would sleep with, that like made it so that he could sleep better if he wasn't touching one of us. And so like Keo brought the dog to bed to have something to kind of cuddle with, and which was a great idea. Really glad that that's been there. But it's been like, when you have a senior dog like that, a 17-year-old
Mm.
dog, like it's your whole life, right? So like everything you do revolves around the dog. So it's like there's no single motion that I do throughout the day that isn't like, oh, there's supposed to be a dog here while I do it, you
Well,
know?
yeah, he was attached to you, wasn't he?
Yeah, like, all the time. Every time I roll over in bed, oh, I make sure not to, crush the dog. Or anytime I
Mm.
walk downstairs, I'm usually holding him under my arm to, put him on his little bed. Or, just every little movement is usually wrapped up in having the dog with me.
Are you open to a couple of logistical questions?
Sure. Yeah, hit me.
Um, After the procedure,
Hmm.
how did you how did you get him home?
Well, he's very small.
Well,
So,
yeah, but
uh,
did they box him up or what?
no, we brought him in a blanket
Yeah.
that I had put in, that little satchel that sometimes I would wear him while doing the
Yeah, yeah,
podcast.
yeah, 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 yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
we wrapped him in a blanket and put him in the satchel. And then so when it was done, we just wrapped him back up in the blanket and we put him back in the satchel and took him home
Oh.
like that. Yeah. Which
Did
made
he
for a
walk or
very
drive?
We drove, made for a very weird moment when we got home, and like our neighbor was outside and it looked like he was going in, but he was like hovering. And so we were like, oh, Matt, go inside, go inside, go inside, go inside. But it turned out he wanted to like talk to us and ask us a question. And we were like, fuck. So it's like, was just asking something about like disposing of a trash can or whatever. And I was like, I felt like we were really short. So later on, I was like, I'm so sorry. I feel like we were being assholes. But like, we had our dogs in that bag with us when we walked in. He was like, okay, no worries. It's all good. Like,
yeah. So they didn't just kind of hand him over, is what I'm saying.
He was like, they put him to sleep on the bed in the blanket. And so they didn't really do anything with him. We just wrapped him back up and
I see.
Put him back in the bag.
Okay, that's the only logistical question I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, one more.
Okay.
Was he interred in a vessel or just raw dog in the
earth? We got him. So there's these things called euthabags, and they're like biodegradable, and you just like zip them up into the euthabag, put his little body in that, and zip it up, and then you can bury it like that, and it should all decompose together and be fine for the
beautiful nutrients.
The lady was like, I know the image is terrible, but you should bury him in a plastic bag so that like things don't like come and try to dig it up. And I was like, listen, I'm a little too earth conscious to put my dog in a plastic bag to just forever be a plastic bag under the backyard. So we put him in the euthabag and all that, and nothing has tried to dig him up. It's just
good. It's euthabag.
Euthabag. Yep.
Love that. I wonder, are they just pets?
Theo just looked at the exact same thing. He was like, how big do these go up to? I was like, not human sized. It's not what
you
those
can
are
get
for.
them in the UK.
Well, there you go. So, when your mice go, you can put them in that. Or you can just bury a mouse. Nothing's going to come for a mouse.
They're too small for me. But
you might fit me in one of those,
like a few
they're like, I think they go up to size for like a Saint Bernard, and I'm smaller than a Saint Bernard.
These are fucking brilliant. You can write on them and everything. You can write little.
I made little message, on there for Mr. Gaucho Edmondson.
Oh, they're brilliant. I love those.
Right? Yeah. I was obviously, again, being me, I was like looking into like, what's the best thing that we can like,
No, this is where I find the price.
No, they're not expensive at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, right?
A gouge-sized bag under a tenner. That's fantastic.
Right? So anyone who needs such services, I'm sorry, but also euthabag, really easy to do, and much cheaper than cremating your pet as well.
If we ever did get a sponsor, I would be perfectly happy for it to be the good people at Euthabag.
That would be really fitting, wouldn't it?
It'd be perfect. It would be absolutely perfect. By Euthabag.
The only choice I make for my pets, Euthabag.
The number one choice in earth-conscious pet carcass disposal.
There you go. So yeah, all that to say, that's why I didn't send stuff and why we didn't record the fan cave last week, because I was busy eating my feelings and watching happy movies instead.
Good.
This week, tomorrow, Chris and I recorded the fan cave, and I will get those mailings out ASAP as well.
Wicked. No one's going to judge you. You were mourning and indeed still are.
Yes, this is very true. Also, on a separate note, Mark.
Hello.
We were talking earlier about the cinemagoing problem, because Furiosa is already out of theaters in your neck of the woods. They were like,
2 weeks.
This thing shit the bed. We're out.
It lasted before they pulled it. Yeah.
And this has become like a huge conversation. What I was saying was that, I've seen a lot of people basically say like, bring back movies for adults, because every movie is supposed to be a blockbuster, so they're all marketed towards the entire family from grandma to baby and things like that, and there's nothing out there for us. So this is amongst the things that people have suggested maybe would help, is bringing back stuff that's for all of us. Although Inside Out 2 just like broke records this weekend.
Peter went to see it yesterday.
Yeah, it's not going to help. But you have your own ideas for how to save cinema. You're convinced you can
So,
save the theaters.
uh, I I could fix the cinema,
Okay, do it. I'm
and
desperate. You know I love the cinema.
it might not be the cinema that you remember. It might not be the cinema that you recognize from your youth.
Uh-oh. Okay.
But if it's to survive,
Mhm.
I feel that cinema has to evolve.
Okay.
And shake off its kind of roots as an entertainment for the masses, for the general population, right?
Okay. Mhm.
Because media consumption trends have changed, media consumption habits
Yep.
have changed. Society, I don't think it's too hyperbolic to state that society itself has changed.
Sure.
Since the good old days of the cinema, and I'd
Right.
go with a farthing and I'd have chips, and I'd still come back with change, and we'd smoke a fucking woodbine in the back, and I'd have a snog with my girl, and I'd come home singing with a pint of fucking ale on the way home, roll out the barrel. Those days are fucking gone,
I don't know
mate.
if we had those days here, but I smell what you're stepping in. Go on.
They're gone. They are
Mhm.
fucking gone. Cinema needs to become uh, a more curated experience.
Mhm.
It needs to, and I look, I am not going to use the word elitist, right?
Mhm.
I'm
Sure.
not.
Okay.
But let's evolve out of this idea that cinema is a casual activity for casual people who want a casual experience. It isn't anymore, right?
Okay.
It's too fucking expensive to
It is.
risk dropping money and to be sat surrounded by people who have the attention span of a 2024 moviegoer,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
When culture serves up your media in 30-second fucking clips and encourages you to respond and to clap back and to make your own voice heard in response to what you're seeing, that ain't cinema.
Sure.
And I think if cinema wants to carry on attracting people, make it worth the fucking money it's costing for a start.
Mhm.
Uh, and take the draft house approach. I've said this to Alan, right? I think there is room in the UK for a chain of theaters, a chain of cinemas with a really strong brand identity, a very, very clear manifesto. You shut the fuck up, you put your fucking phone away, and
Right.
you're here to enjoy a movie with other people who want to enjoy a movie. If a cinema chain were to make that its brand and actually follow through on enforcing it, I am absolutely convinced that that would take off.
The funny thing is, I think that what you're talking about is a return to the old way cinema worked. The problem is the new way that it does.
Yes.
But what we're really talking about, and Al said this years ago, and I was like, this is exactly right, was like bringing back ushers would entirely change the movie going game, because it used to be that you didn't talk during movies, you didn't text during movies and things like that. But it turns out people need that enforced. They don't just do that in
100%.
and of
The honor system
themselves.
does not fucking
It
work when you're in
doesn't
the
work.
dark.
That's what we've found, is it doesn't work. So yeah, you're paying exorbitant amounts of money to go to these things where odds are there's going to be people who answer their phone in the middle of it and who start texting because they lost interest partway through and all that kind of stuff. That if you just had someone who every now and again came through with their weird little lightsaber and, reminded you they were there, it would stop. It'd be
Right. So
instantly done.
let's workshop this, right? Let's chuck a few ideas about what if, as a moviegoer, what if, as a patron of this chain of cinemas, the name will come to me at some point, it's not there yet.
Okay.
I'm a patron, and for my, let's say, $8.99 a ticket, what if I have an anonymous fucking narc button on my chair.
Yes,
Yeah,
seriously, for
yeah.
real.
Right? Maybe even like a directional rocker, like a left, right, up, down kind of rocker, and I can point to a
Yeah,
particular
where's the
seat.
disturbance?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then, like you said, matey boy can come in with his light. When, let's say that a threshold has been reached, let's say they've received like 3 or 4 different kind of inputs about a
Right.
certain direction in the theater. They'd come in, keep an eye on it, they're present. And all the while on the posters, on our adverts, on the tickets, we are in bold text. We're about fucking coming to see movies. This isn't a social venue. This isn't a fucking bar. This isn't your living room. This isn't TikTok. You come and watch the film and you enjoy it and fuck off, and we'll see you next time. So when you see me in my uniform with my light coming through that door, you fucked up.
Right. I guess for me, and this comes from like being an American moviegoer, you know that I do like a degree of engagement with
Yeah, yeah,
the movie. I don't want like Alamo Drafthouse is fun to go to occasionally for like an independent movie or whatever, but I don't necessarily want to all the time feel like if anything escapes from me,
mm.
it's gonna be like you're fucking out of here, like that's a stressful way to see movies.
No, that ain't what I'm
But
saying. That ain't what I'm
like,
saying.
but you know
In,
what I mean is I think simply just a person coming in every now and again with their little thingy is enough because it always was when I was growing up. You always were like you were
mm,
afraid that like they would catch you talking or texting or things like that. You didn't need anything further than that. You didn't need a button or anything like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
I think it's
yeah,
simply just the fact that people know there's nothing anyone can do about it and no one is
yeah,
going to come for them is
yeah,
like enough that they act like assholes and stuff. I want
yes.
movies to be for the masses. I want us all to go and have a good time. And if it's the right kind of movie, we, are raucous and partying together. And if it's not that kind of movie,
No,
we're all
no, no.
solemn and things
You
like
had
that.
me until
But
raucous and partying together. Absolutely not.
I
Absolutely fucking not.
I love it in
Laugh
the
if
right
it's funny,
setting.
obviously.
Sure.
Gasp if it scared you.
Right.
But a raucous party fucking vibe at the cinema? Fuck
Well,
no.
yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I'm not talking about like we're all talking through it. That's not what I mean. But I mean, as in, like, there have been movies that I've gone to and like say there's something scary in it, right? That like the whole audience jumps or something like that. If for like 15 seconds after that, that like little cathartic thing where everyone is like, oh my God,
Yeah, that kind of
that
come
was,
down. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
love that kind of thing. I think that that's like super fun and we're all having this shared experience together. So I don't want to like cut it into, this thing where we're all playing narc on each other, especially because I don't want to have to sit through the movie thinking about narking on other people. All I want is for someone to come in every now and again, remind them that we will kick you out of here if you're going to be an asshole. And that's it. That's all you need. Pay someone to do that.
Okay. So by that same token, do you think that there's also potential in a chain of theaters where the experience of being in a fucking shared room with a load of people who also don't particularly give a fuck about the film could be the one that they lead with? Social cinema or social
Yeah, think it'd
screenings.
have to be very
So
gimmicked. Well, because that's the thing is like there are those, right? Like I go to lots of outdoor screenings and, gimmicky
yeah.
screenings and things like
Yeah.
that. And I don't think that there's any danger of those falling out of fashion. People love
No.
to go to something like that, it's the actual in cinema thing. But I think like what it really comes down to is like you said, like it really does come down to that people are jerks in there and they need to do something about that and that it costs too much. So like,
Yes.
people only go, and this is like, I think that's the uncritical thing they're doing is that they're making everything that goes into the theater for a wide audience because they think you're going to make that calculation that, okay, this is for all of us and I'm not going to be wasting my $100 between my whole family and the popcorn and all this kind of stuff to go see it. Like Inside Out
Yeah,
2,
yeah, yeah.
people showed up because it's from a franchise we all know about. We know that all that money that we're putting into it, we're going to get a return on where like nobody is going to go like whenever I go see things like when I went to see The Strangers, right? Like who's going to
Yeah.
spend $17 on a ticket to go see The Strangers? You know, like that's absurd. So no one's doing it and they're like, "Gosh, why is no one going to the movie theater?"
See, uh there was that exec at Sony a couple of weeks back who I'm not sure if this was the same guy or if it was two different people, but there was almost within a couple of days of one another, real good fucking sense coming out of Sony
Mm-hmm.
and industry murdering just ridiculous horse shit.
Right.
It seems it felt like in one day there was a leak of what an exec at Sony saying cheaper movies. We need to make movies for less money.
Yep.
We need to make movies. Movies don't need to be 3 fucking hours. Don't
Nope.
need it.
Mm-mm.
Tighter, leaner, more grown up, shorter movies will be
Yes.
very good for cinema as a whole. Can't argue with any of that.
Mm-hmm. The
But
mid-budget
then
movie.
exactly, yeah, great. Mid-budget movies for adults. Fucking
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. But then on the other hand, seemingly within a day or two, they were like, right, let's fucking ramp up AI research now to
Yes,
make our movies
exactly.
cheaper.
Like,
That ain't it. That ain't it.
fuck's sake, that's not what we
Yeah.
were saying. Yeah,
And I
so I don't
wonder
know.
if
We should obviously be in charge of movies, is what it comes down to.
oh, 100%. I also had the idea some years back when the kind of the Infinity saga was at its kind of the final couple of chapters. I wondered if some blockbusters might skip the cinema altogether, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's take Disney Plus, for example, right?
Right.
What about some kind of system, whether it's hardware or whatever, whereby your Disney Plus app knows what equipment you're using to watch it through. It knows what TV you've got. It knows what sound system you've got. And might Disney certify specific kinds of equipment as being like Disney certified?
Uh-huh.
You don't need to go to the fucking cinema to watch this. Your home setup is really fucking good. You can watch Avengers in your house if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they're aiming for generally.
Mm.
I don't like that though, because I go to the movies to go to the movies.
Yeah.
Like,
Ah,
sitting in my living room will never be going to the movies, period.
no, I don't
Yeah.
agree at all.
For me, it will never be because I can look at my phone if I want to. I can, constantly pause it and get up, go to the bathroom. I might decide to turn it off. There's any
Mm,
number of interruptions and things like that that can happen while I'm watching it at home. And, I go to the cinema specifically to be in a room where none of those things exist and it's just me in the movie and some
yes.
friends as
Yeah, I
well,
get that. I do
two
get that.
different things to me. Um,
I'd like what I guess I'm reaching for is I think the cinema industry needs a disruptor.
but that's like to me, it doesn't. It needs to
Hmm,
go back. That's what I'm
I
saying.
see.
It's like, and that's the
Return to
idea
its
of like the
principles.
mid budget movie. Like, think of what your favorite movies are from like growing up and the things that you have the fondest memories of and stuff like that. I think of things like Practical Magic and Empire Records and Can't Hardly Wait, and like none of them were blockbusters. There's like very few things that like really snagged me in my life were huge blockbusters, and they simply don't make the mid-budget movie for theaters anymore.
Mm,
They put them straight to their streaming things and stuff like that, um, and then expect you to spend a ton of money to go see their blockbusters that they spent all of their money to make
mm,
in the
mm,
theater. And I say bring those little ones that you didn't spend so much on, and that then your box office return is a much bigger portion of its budget that you're getting back instead of constantly trying to make up for the fact that you spent, you know, $500 billion on this thing that you made.
mm.
That's
Yeah,
what I think would make a difference.
yes, I can't disagree with any of that. But I think we need to start kicking some ass.
We got to start our own studio where we make logically the kinds of movies that need to come into the theater, and then
Yeah,
everyone will be like, "Why is this working?" I'll be like, "Gosh, I don't know." It's
because us.
because us, obviously. But we did watch some movies
We watched a
this
few movies.
week,
Yeah. Not a
all at
massive
home.
all at home.
Yes, did not make it to the movie
What
theater
did
this
you
week.
see in the cinema last?
Um, Strangers, I think.
Uh,
Why?
I'm wondering what mine was.
I see movies in the theater
Apes, Planet of
all
the
the
Apes.
time. Planet of the Apes.
Mm.
There you go. Yeah. Normally I go at least once a week, but where it's kind of a dry spell at the theater around the corner right now. There's no horror
Okay.
movies there. They're not getting any horror movies this summer for some reason. I don't know why.
Are there any?
I mean, there have been the past several weeks, like Strangers, like
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
violence one. The what is it? I can. Neither of us are ever going to remember what the name of this movie
The
is, but
violence one.
the violence one, the guy
Violent
walking
in a
through the
violent
woods and
nature.
being violent in a violent nature. Yeah. There's been several, but they haven't put any of them in the theater around the corner.
I'm absolutely frothing to watch that movie. I don't know where the fuck it is.
I know. Come on, Shutter, get it together. It should be. I mean, it
July
has to
the
be coming soon.
12th.
Really?
Fuck's sake.
I did. Wow, that's wild. Like it's a
Isn't
Shutter
it
original.
crazy?
Once it's
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
in the theater, it should just
Yeah.
be straight
Nothing
up on
stopping them
there.
putting that up there tonight.
Yeah, that's dumb. But what else was on the docket this week?
What was on the slate? We did the stupid fucking shark one, didn't we?
Yeah, that was last week.
All right. So let me just super quickly mention Thale,
Yes.
which is a Norwegian spooky creature feature. You would not enjoy it.
Okay.
Um,
I'm not usually into like the Norwegian kind of vibe.
yeah, it's a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Detached, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know? And this is kind of detached. It deals with two guys who work as crime scene cleansers.
Okay.
And in one of their jobs in a premises, they find a lady who turns out to be a mythical creature with a tail and things like that. Really cool. This is perfectly solid, really atmospheric, beautifully shot, nicely performed, idiosyncratic, quirky, indie vibes. I have no problem with Thale at all. It's quite highly regarded, I gather, and I have no issues with giving it 3.5 stars. It's really relatable for a
Okay.
for a country like Norway. I don't really have much to latch on to there. I don't really relate to the Scandinavian
Yeah.
uh
Just
you know
vibe.
vibes. I'm trying
Yeah.
hard not to say vibes, but sometimes only vibes will do.
Yeah. Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think we all have ideas of how we'd react if, while we were working one day, we found a mythical woodland witch creature.
Sure.
We all,
Yeah.
and that was borne out in Thale. They reacted like I think I would.
Nice. I do. I appreciate that in something. When
Yeah.
people act like people, I'm a
Mm.
I'm a big fan of that. Have you
Yes.
seen just because of the premise of this, have you seen the Greg Davis show where he's a crime scene cleaner? I think it might just be called The Cleaner.
No, I haven't. You love Greg Davis, don't
I
you?
do. I do love Greg Davis. I mean,
Why?
listen, why not?
I mean, I don't wish him ill. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got no issues with the guy, but he's got a fucking fan base, and I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I don't.
Taskmaster is probably like hugely at the center of that because Taskmaster is so beloved.
Yeah,
So I think, you can't help but love him when you're used to watching him on that. And so,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I've seen him on other panel things and stuff like that as well. Um, but yeah, he's on this show where he plays a guy who cleans up after crime scenes. And it's quite funny, but it's also, um there's relatable things about it, and it's at times very dark, and sort of dealing with someone who's like uh doing a job that's very important and things like that, but that everyone just like treats like shit as like like he's a janitor and stuff like that, and like his life
Yes,
has fallen apart in various ways that manifests through his experiences as a cleaner. So each episode is like sort of self-contained.
nice. I
um
like that.
yeah, and like I think it's like the first one has like Helena Bonham Carter, and it has some like pretty
Oh,
crazy um guest stars
casting.
throughout it. Yeah, but I quite enjoy it. I can't remember if it's called The Cleaner, but it feels like it's called The Cleaner. And it's
Something I
wow.
love to do. Would you care to guess for me how old Greg Davis is?
He is 56 years old.
Did you know that, or is that a guess?
That's a guess.
It's fucking bang on. It's
Nice.
bang on. And his birthday is in May, so it's pretty much bang on.
Thank you. Thank you.
How? I
There
think you
is
knew that.
no, I didn't know this, but I will say there's a running theme through this season of Taskmaster, where this one guy on it, he was on Happy Valley. Is that cop show?
Yeah, sure.
He was on Happy Valley. That's what I know him from, but apparently he's also like a comedian. But he is apparently like the same age or younger than Greg Davis, but he looks way older, so everyone like treats him like the grandpa on the show. And so I had
Okay.
in my mind that I was like, he's a man in his 50s. That was
Yeah,
where I was coming from,
very
but
nice.
pretty pleased with myself there.
Very impressive.
Also 6'8", Greg Davis.
Huge.
Big
Over
man.
2 meters.
Big.
Huge.
Yes, I suppose it is. Okay, so Thale, great. Did you want to talk about other ones before I get into mine?
Yes, we can certainly do that. Let me see. What else did I watch?
I have that you watched one of my favorites this week.
Yeah, that was last night, in fact. I talked about The Strangers last week, didn't I?
Yes.
Didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I saw the TV glow, right?
Yes.
And really, 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 really rated it. Man. I'm actually hurt that you didn't. I really enjoyed it. The I thought the characters were really compelling. I thought the confusion, the kind of the lost, kind of vacant kind of space that these characters live in, they feel like liminal people almost. They're
Yep.
people in a state
Exactly.
of being which is, in flux, just vague lines around characters who are, empty fucking spaces where there should be fucking souls and people. It's a lost movie. It's a movie which feels like it's people who are struggling to put their finger on who or why they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. That fucking just really speaks to me. And I thought the 80s kind of TV vibe that it conjured up was really beautifully done.
I did
I
not.
loved the
Supposed to be 90s, and I think it
90s, my
misses the
mistake,
mark
sorry.
completely. I mean, I
Did
think it
that
did some things in it that were like it was that thing where I was like, it almost gets it, but it's not. It's not it. It doesn't get it at all. But that did bring one of the things that I I liked. Probably the only thing I liked in this is there was like one scene where there was like two guys standing out on the lawn, and I was like, is that Pete and Pete? And it's like from a distance, and then I like looked up on IMDb. I was like, "That's Pete and Pete.
Who were
That's
Pete and
cute."
Pete?
A popular '90s TV show that they're
Oh,
clearly trying
good.
to emulate with the pink opaque
Yeah,
on.
yeah. See, it was the show within a show
Mhm.
that led to me breathlessly recommending I saw the TV glow to you.
Yeah, see, but this is like it's like so many of the things that like I hate about movies are present in this, and this is why it like surprised me that you recommended this one to me
I
because
was
it's
so
vibes.
convinced. I thought this was a fucking absolute lock.
No, this is like a vibes all the way through kind
It
of
is.
movie, which
It is.
I hate. The flat affect through this whole thing, like
Mm.
this was I had to turn it off 20 minutes before the end because I was like, if another one of these people says a single fucking word, I'm going to throw something through my TV. I hate them so fucking much.
There's
Make an
no
expression.
intonation in
Yeah,
anyone's voice.
like I literally yelled at the TV, make an expression. I was like so upset with like I'm like people don't talk like this. Like this is not you have to act like you felt something ever in your life. And I don't like the like, like that it's the thing that I hate the most. It's self-serious. There's nothing funny. There's nothing that like hints that it's not taking itself seriously or that like any of this is like,
Yeah, I
it's
know.
like this is an important movie and we are doing important art with this movie.
See,
Oh God,
that
I hate
that
it so
can work
much.
if it is borne out to be true. if you I think it's fine to take your work seriously if
Well,
you've
remember
made
that's
good,
the
serious
difference.
work.
There's a difference between taking it seriously and being self-serious. That annoys me. And I don't like self-serious things. And this reads as self-serious to me, that it's like
Mm,
very aware of like, I am making an important metaphor. And, you know, the way that I'm doing this is like very important. While it's very like just kind of like aping like real like Tumblr and TikTok aesthetics of things. And that like, so the like attempt at this 90s thing feels so shallow. It doesn't feel like the actual 90s. It feels like someone
yeah,
who went on Pinterest and went 90s aesthetic, made a
yeah.
movie based on the 90s aesthetic. And, you know, I was just, yeah, the entire time just sitting there. Like, also, you know, from like just a personal thing, this is not necessarily a judgment on the good or bad of the movie, but like we've talked before about like one of the reasons I don't like animation,
Mm.
being that like I can't read their expressions, so like they don't hit for me at
They don't come
all.
to life. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. And so having two characters who like never express
Emote in any way.
emotion
Yeah.
in any possible way, like there's nothing for me to connect with, because I've learned how to understand humans via aping their
Cues,
expressions,
visual.
by
Yeah, yeah, I
cues,
see.
right? Like, you
Mm.
know, so if you don't give me a cue, to me, you are a robot, you know? So I didn't connect with these characters at all. I don't like those kinds of like, it's a very throwback to like 2000s indies movies for someone to like, you know, just sort of like wander up to someone and become their friend. And it just
Sit on
like
the
is,
bleachers. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, sit on the bleachers, you know, go to their house, have awkward sleepover, like, you know, just kind of like incidentally like attach to each other in these ways. And then like by the time, you know, this character disappears or whatever, I was like, who gives a fuck? Like, you know, oh, annoying girl who doesn't have any emotions disappeared. Okay. Like, so it was just, the whole thing
Oh,
was like deeply impossible for me to get through. I just could not do it.
I was so sure this time.
It's a, you know, it's made for a specific audience is the thing, you know. And I think
Yeah.
it has hit that audience very well. And I think like this is why it had very limited release.
Mm,
um you know, is that it's like this is not necessarily the kind of thing that everybody is going to the movie theater and going to be like, yes, absolutely. But there is a target audience that has, by word of mouth,
mm,
really like talk this out, who is like, this is my shit. It's just the absolute opposite of my shit.
mm. No, you've contextualized that beautifully with the you know, with the what's the word I'm looking, fuck me, my vocabulary's gone to shit today. That's because I'm 45 and I'm on day 2 of a 2-day hangover.
Right,
That's
yeah,
why I
exactly. You've
can't
had a
fucking verbalize
weekend.
inscrutable characters.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense now that you've put it
Yeah.
that way.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. That's like, that's always going to be like a tough sell for me. It's why like
Sell,
also
yeah.
like I, you know, never liked Jenna Malone in movies throughout like the 2000s, because that was the character she played, was like blank face,
Yeah,
no
yeah, yeah, yeah.
emotion. And then when I saw her in the Hunger Games movie, I was like, holy shit, Jenna Malone rules. She's actually fucking awesome. But, you know, the blank faced flat affect person is just, it's a trope that, you know, I'm not into. So like I said, it connected super well with the people that it is for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that is me. I'm not who this movie was made for.
You
Surely.
love movies like this, though.
Oh, I really do. Yeah, I really do.
Yeah. Right. Like, not necessarily, like, I think that's the thing, is like, not just who it's for in terms of like getting the message or whatever, things like that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
even that is fraught. I was, you know, I always, every time I finish a movie, go through like the hundreds of letterbox reviews and stuff like that. And it's like, for some people, this was like there's one person who was like, this is the first time I'm acknowledging out loud that I'm trans, and this movie caused me to do that, you know? There's other people on there who are like, this is fucking offensive as a movie
Yeah,
about
yeah. I'm
transness, you
insulted.
know?
Mm,
Right. Yeah. And it's like, it has that kind of thing. So I don't think it's necessarily like for you in a sense that it's like
Yes.
this is really speaks to your soul so much as like this is a
The
movie that hits the notes
listen,
you like.
I'm gonna say the vibes again.
But it's vibes, yeah.
Emotionally untethered characters, lost fucking, lost souls,
Mm-hmm.
unreliable narration. Is it happening? Is it not happening? I'm
Yeah.
down with all that, and
Yeah.
I love this one.
It did cause me afterwards though to go and watch 3 episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark though, and that was
See, yeah, yeah.
delightful.
Not not having partaken of that era of TV like you
Mm-hmm.
did, I thought the Pinko Pig seemed pretty spot on.
Oh God, no. I was like, I kept on like wanting it to just like do something that was anything like it looked like a 90s show,
Yeah, yeah.
but the interactions on the show and the tone and things like that were like nothing like a 90s show. And so it was like, oh, it's like just give me
Give me
just give
something.
me
Come on.
something. Just give me something. And yeah, but watching Are You Afraid of the Dark afterwards, I was like, oh, this hits the spot. This is exactly what I
Good.
wanted. Finish that.
Good.
So,
Well, I'm sorry
hey,
it didn't land for you, but I'm glad you were able to salvage some
no.
joy.
I was going to watch it either way anyway. So, it's
Yes,
not
of
like
course.
you convinced me to watch a movie that otherwise I wouldn't have, and now I'm mad.
Good. Okay.
But the other movie you watched is amongst my favorites.
The other movie, sometimes just scrolling about the place with no plan leads to such wonderful places. I mean, uh, again, just to contextualize, 2.5 bottles of wine, right? That's what's got me like this on Friday night. And in a search for some kind of succor, some kind of balm for my soul, you know what I
Mm,
mean? Some kind of tonic,
yep.
to bring me back. I happened upon Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And it just never fails, does it? It's like Bonjela on an ulcer. Killer Clowns.
What?
Right, fuck. Think, Mark. Mouth ulcers, right?
Okay, yeah.
Oh, so
Mhm.
painful, so irritating. Until you just get that first little dab of Bonjela on that mouth ulcer.
Okay.
Ooh.
And Basal on a canker sore is what you're
There you
saying here.
go. Canker sore. Is that what you call a mouth ulcer?
Yes. Hmm.
Mm. In that it's instantly soothing and cooling,
Hmm.
and it just gives you a glimpse of what life might be like if things were good. That's what Killer Clowns is. It's
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
it's like a fucking portal into another dimension where everything's okay.
Truth. Yeah, man, I love that movie. It just puts me in a
It's
good
the
mood every
best.
time.
It's the best, and it every time I see it, it gets more deranged. There's bits in it that I never seem to remember, like the little clown heads on sticks. What are they all about? Amazing.
Oh, it's so good. It's, it also falls in line with things like Are You Afraid of the Dark and stuff like that, that to that end now at 38, like I still find Killer Clowns kind of scary. Like, because it's
Yeah,
just so uncanny and
yeah,
weird,
yeah, yeah,
and the
yeah,
way they move and things like that, like it's so bizarre that it like, yeah, it gets my tummy a little unsettled watching it,
yeah. I
even though
get
it's
it.
also very silly and fun and all of those kinds of things. So yeah, that's just always a good time.
It's yeah. Why has that never had a sequel?
I feel like so Keo actually is like acquainted or was acquainted at that time with the Kyoto brothers who made it.
Okay, great, great, great.
And I know that they had like in there, so basically Killer Clowns was supposed to be their Ninja Turtles. That's how
I
they
see.
put it at the time. And there were various sort of like studio machinations and all kinds of things like that that ended up with it kind of just becoming destined for bargain bin B movie status
Yeah.
forever. So it was supposed to be a bigger thing than it was.
Mm,
And yeah, there would have been sequels and things like that, but there were, I'll have to ask Keo to tell the story at some point, but
I'd love that. I'd love that.
yeah, there were reasons why this
Because
only
time has
went
been
this
very
far.
kind to it, hasn't it? I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
think
it's
so.
found it's got a solid kind of audience.
Hmm.
People keep revisiting it. It's had a great cultural kind of impact. People keep talking about it. There's money, man. There really is. There's money in a
Oh,
Killer Clowns film.
absolutely. I mean, that's
There's
why they just
money.
made that game, right? Like, there's
Yeah,
absolutely
of
still
course.
money in the franchise.
All right, here's my
And
pitch.
yeah.
Killer Clowns 2 title TBC, but entirely a period piece. It's set literally the day after the first one.
Okay.
And everything is, everything is period. Everything is set design and fucking vehicles, no phones and shops and
Right.
costumes. It's 1986 still, and it takes place the day after. And as soon as they vanish, they just another load of clowns come back, and it carries on.
I love it. I'm in. I'm
That's it.
100% in for that movie.
Yep. Are Dickie's still alive? Can we get them to do the song?
That's a valid question. I'll have Keo call up the Kyoto brothers and see what we can get going.
Let's fucking green lights.
um,
Dickies are an American punk rock
still
band formed
going.
in '77. Yes.
Hey, nice, perfect, all set. It'll be very hard to top that OG theme, but in
Yeah.
my
But here's the thing: we aren't trying to top it. The conceit is this movie came out in 1988.
Sure. Right,
That's
but
the
like,
conceit.
do we need, do the Dickies make a new theme song, or they just sing it again?
Oh, they do. No, they make a new one, but with the vibe that this movie was
Yeah. Oh,
greenlit
yeah.
20
sure.
years ago. You're not trying to top anything. Imagine it's 1988.
Love it. I'm in.
Oh man.
my yes. We're just like full of great ideas, so everyone should be paying us tons of money to make stuff. This week I, like I said, I was in kind of mourning mode and watching different things, so I won't like go deep into all these stuff because most of them are out of our purview. But I will say I went into like kind of like happy movie mode, like things that
Nice.
like, would be like just kind of make me feel good in some way or another, which centrally were Romy and Michelle's high school reunion. Can't fucking go wrong. So goddamn good. I think it's even better now than it was at the time. It's just, man, that movie is so good.
It is
and
good,
just
isn't
like,
it? When just like with Killer Clowns, when time is
yeah, just like,
kind.
yeah, and it's so like short and to the point, so it's like a hour and 28 minutes or something like that, and it's like bam, 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 story. You're golden. I love it. I watched To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, which I had never seen. But I was telling Keo my like my connection to this movie was that when I was in elementary school, my fourth grade teacher would give us these newspapers for kids, and every week we would go through them together. We'd read the top stories. We knew what was going on in the presidential elections, and we knew what was going on in the
This
world.
This is a teacher, you say?
This is a teacher, Mr. Ward, who unfortunately passed a few months ago, but he was phenomenal man. My brother and I both had
Mr.
him.
Ward. Yep.
Yeah, Mr. Ward absolutely shaped me in many ways. And he one of the things that was in this newspaper was the top 10 box office movies. And so I was very aware in 1995 of what was in the box office the whole time and how long it had been in the box office. And so I remember they didn't have the whole title, but it was shorter to To Wong Fu, being in the top 10 for several weeks in 1995 because of that little paper. But I didn't know what it was. Like at the time, I'm sure I thought it was like a martial arts movie or something like that. And it wasn't until much later that I was like, oh, nope, it's about drag queens. And it's delightful. If you've never seen To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. Oh, it's so good. It is just a real feel-good movie about drag queens trying to drive across the United States who end up stranded in this middle of nowhere town full of hillbillies of vaguely threatening auras, and then winning over the town and sort of changing this place for good. And it
does sound excellent.
Yeah, it's great. It's Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, and John Leguizamo. I mean, can you ask for anything more than that?
Yeah, fair enough.
So big into that. I watched Pride, which people have been telling me to watch for ages. And so I finally got you to put that on the Plex for me, which is about the gay and lesbians for the miners, who helped to sort of fund a town who was participating in the Welsh miners' strikes, and kind of tells the story of these overcoming their various prejudices towards each other in order to work together.
Beautiful.
For this. And have you seen Pride?
No.
Oh, I'm surprised. Okay, yeah, I would recommend it. It's a great little watch. If you're
Whereabouts in Wales is it set?
a place I'd never heard of. You would probably know, but it's definitely South Wales because there's a joke in it where one of the characters is from North Wales and everyone acts like they're going to ostracize him as a result of it.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because if it's minor strike, it's definitely somewhere I'd recognize.
Yeah, it's somewhere in South Wales, but it was a name I'd never heard before and is not coming to me off the top of my head. I think it started with a D. But yeah, it's a good little flick. And if you're looking for Pride Month themed things, both Tuong Fu and Pride are obviously great choices to get in the zone for that as well. I also watched Brats, the documentary about the Brat Pack made by Andrew McCarthy.
Oh, holy shit! Right, okay. I
Um,
I I heard Brats with a Z, the
oh
fucking
no.
dolls with the
No,
stupid
no, no, no,
heads.
no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. Let's listen.
Okay.
I wasn't that desperate.
What?
No, Brats is a documentary about the Brat Pack in which Andrew McCarthy tracks down most of the members of the Brat Pack and basically is trying to get them to talk about how terrible that label was for them. And the
Right.
article in which it, was coined was like so terrible for their careers and whatnot. And over the course of this, it becomes very clear that no one else is as traumatized by this as he was. And so it's kind of like embarrassing to watch in a
Mm,
way. Like
mm.
seems like a very nice guy. I had a big crush on him when I was a kid. I appreciate seeing him. The whole Brat Pack all look amazing now. They all look
How many are left? Who's
incredible.
alive still?
All of them. Yeah, there's no dead Brat Packers.
Wait,
Um,
wait. You're not talking about Sinatra and Dean Martin.
no. Oh my God. We are really talking past each other on
We are
this
cross
one.
purposes this week's
The
Joanne,
Brat
yes.
Pack. For anyone else who
Martin
thought I
Sheen,
was
yeah,
talking about
Charlie
not
Sheen.
Martin Sheen, but
The other one, yeah.
Emilio Estevez, Demi
Yes,
Moore,
yes, yes, yes,
Judd
yes.
Nelson, Andrew McCarthy, Anthony Michael Hall, Rob Lowe,
Mm.
that whole posse uh
I'm up to speed on
back
there.
on board with me. And hopefully if people at home didn't know what I was talking about, that's who I'm talking about. They were Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, all those kinds of movies from that point. And
Mm,
so I think like when he goes to Demi's house, like she is like almost like gives him like a really good therapy talk where she's like essentially being like, this is around like how you framed this, right? Like you've been living in the shadow of this thing, but like it's more about how you interpreted and framed being given this label than it is about the label itself. And that's more or less where everyone else is on this too. And he keeps like sort of trying to, pull this thread out of how bad this was, but nobody else is really with him on this.
mm.
They're kind of like, well, yeah, it sucked at the time, but whatever, it's the past. And he even talks to the journalist who coined it. And the journalist is like unrepentant and is basically just like, you need to get over it. Like, and so no one is really on his team, but he doesn't change tacks as a result of this in this documentary. So it's a weird one to watch. I think if you like the Brat Pack, you're gonna um, get something out of just seeing them and seeing how good they look and getting a little reminiscence or whatever. But it's a very
Hmm.
weird documentary because it doesn't really accomplish what it sets out to do. He could have used someone else directing it instead of him doing it himself, someone else to guide the narrative towards the things that are
Yeah,
actually happening.
the documentary it turned into sounds a lot more interesting than the documentary it was intended to be. If that,
Right. It's like if he had really leaned into that, like, and
yeah.
processed, like, so what, who am I as a person that I internalized all of this and,
Mm,
came out this way when all of my, colleagues were able to move on with their lives and then had like, done like a meditation on that. I think it really would have been something
mm.
instead of it just like kind of, yeah, looking like the one guy who didn't get it, you know. It is what it is. The other terrible documentary that I watched this week was called Six Schizophrenic Brothers. And don't
What's it
don't
about?
watch it. Yeah, right. I wonder. Don't watch this documentary. It is like the peak exploitation dreck. I think it was on Max, and it is about exactly that. It's a family with 12 siblings, and six of them are schizophrenic. And what happened as a result
Christ.
And the documentary is just, I mean, like when it interviews the surviving schizophrenic brothers from this family, like they're interviewed in these like dark, menacing warehouses that make them look like monsters. And like there's all the, like, it's just, oh, it's the worst. Don't bother with it. But I was reading the Letterboxd page for this because everyone was in agreement on that this was terrible. And someone said, like, I'm upset that this is what they did with one of my favorite books. And so I went and I looked up the book, which is called Hidden Valley Road, and it has been hard to pull myself away from because it
Oh,
is
great.
really good. And I texted you about this earlier. I was like, I'll talk to you about this later, but
You
you
did.
have to
Yeah, yeah,
check out
yeah.
this book. Hidden Valley Road is the actual story of this family. Like I said, a dozen kids, 6 of them with schizophrenia. Big content warning for like sexual assault and rape and things like that in here. You know, violence, murder, suicides, like all kinds of stuff in this because it's a family with intense mental illness. But it also goes through kind of like, you know, this was like the 70s,
Mm.
and you know you're early on in the DSMs, and they're still trying to figure out like what schizophrenia is, what qualifies as schizophrenia, what is it being caused by, how do you treat it, and so you're also getting all of these sort of insights into like these doctors and psychologists and all this kind of stuff, like coming and trying to figure this out, like people who think, you know, like one of the prevailing early things about it was like, it's a mother's fault. This is a disorder that happens because moms aren't good enough, you know? And so like that was a huge part of it versus people who are like, well, this is something that like you can only treat with medication versus people who are like,
Mm.
no, you can do this with therapies. People who thought this is a societal problem and like these people are actually like they're evolved beyond us and it's society that is the problem, not the schizophrenic. And so you're seeing all of these kinds of things coming together while hearing like the actual sort of really sad stories of like
Yeah,
what
yeah,
on the
yeah.
ground this looked like for this family, especially for the 2 girls who were the youngest in the family. There's only 2 girls, and they're both the youngest daughters who like bore the brunt of what a lot of the most horrible elements of this was. So big recommend Hidden Valley Road. It is
I've
a
never
hell
thought
of a
of
read.
schizophrenia as a genetic complaint.
Well,
I'd
and
never thought of
that's,
it as.
yeah, right. Because it isn't a simple genetic one, at least. And that was one of the
Right.
things that they were dealing with. Because it's like, you don't, there is definitely a predisposition if other people in your family at some point have had it towards you having it, but it's not as simple as if your parents have it, then a certain amount of your children will. It's not like twins, right? Like it's not,
Mm.
you know, it's not like your eye color. It's not a guarantee. And so, you know, one of the things that they're, and I haven't gotten to any conclusions on this yet, but one of the things that they're kind of looking into is they're like, so why, what is manifesting here? And this is early in the DNA testing phase too. So that's like, they can only like look at like one gene at a time, but they're like, we think this must be a combination of genes,
Mm.
which is why it activates in some people and not in other ones, you know, because they have to have the right combo
Yes.
of the genes, you know, that they are getting through heredity that come together and cause the perfect storm to do this. So you don't normally find families like this with like a huge amount of schizophrenics in it. You know, they might go, "Oh yeah, I think like your great uncle was schizophrenic or something like that," but it's not usually like this.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a fascinating look at trying to figure out what this is in the first place and how it actually affects people.
Hidden Valley Road.
Hidden Valley Road. Sounds like a salad dressing, but it's a book about schizophrenia.
Thank you.
Um,
Yes, I shall. I shall pick that up.
and the only other thing I watched, I even though we talked about how we were done with religious horror and nuncore and everything for a while, I went back to the OG and watched The Omen, and I don't regret it because that movie rules.
It's good, isn't it?
It's so good. And I forget,
Mm.
like, I was talking to Q about this, and I was like, I forget how violent it is. And he's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't really think of it as a violent movie either. I'm like, yeah, but there are like some crazy deaths in that
Yes.
movie
It's
throughout
it's
it.
it catches you off guard
Exactly.
with those
Yeah.
kind of those kills, those moments of violence. It
Hmm.
properly whoa, it takes you back because you don't see it coming. I think I called it cruel the other week, and it is. It
Mhm.
surprises you with these really
100%.
creative deaths.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and my biggest takeaway from that is, the Omen really gets that Christian theology is terrifying. And if you take it
Mm,
literally,
mm.
it's horror. They're not everything that all the scripture and stuff like that, that's in the book that they're using here. And they are just pulling out the actual words from the Bible and the actual theology and things like that. And it's like, yeah, that's scary, huh?
Yes.
There it is. And it does that much better than any other religious horror movie I think I've ever seen does.
Uh, Exorcist still pips it for me. But yeah, I don't disagree with a single word you said. It's
Yeah.
a meticulously put together film, really good.
Hmm. Yeah, I love Exorcist. I just
Mm.
think that The Omen really nails the theology of it in a way that I haven't seen other ones do. So yeah, that was my week.
Wonderful. Good week.
Yes. Now, um, this is a thing we've been sort of sitting on for a few weeks and kind of referenced as well. Obviously, one of the things that is my passion on this here podcast show is sort of myth busting and bringing justice to
Scotching.
people who we've scotching things people who we have misunderstood or concepts we've misunderstood and things like that. And about actually a month ago exactly, an article turned up in the New Yorker by journalist Rachel Aviv that in some 13,000 words cast doubt on the entire Lucy Letby case, which we have referenced on multiple occasions on
Mm.
this here podcast. The alleged serial killer nurse who killed lots of babies in the UK. Now, due to legal barriers in the UK around what you can publish about an active case, which she's actually in court right now for another attempted murder. So hence it's active, even though she's already been sentenced for 7 murders.
Yes.
The New Yorker had to block Brits from being able to access this story at all. And of course, as Aviv and Neiman Labs' Sarah Sire point out, there don't seem to be any such rules about articles about her guilt, with the Daily Mail saying that Letby has, quote, thrown open the door to hell and the stench of evil overwhelms us all. And the
What the
Guardian
fuck?
calling her one of the most notorious female murderers of the last century. So there don't seem to be any rules around declaring her guilty in a journalistic setting and haven't been this whole time, but you can't question whether there might have been a miscarriage of justice thus far or it's influencing the current trial. It's interesting. So here,
It is fascinating, and
yeah,
it's a law that is woefully unprepared for the way that anyone communicates in the year of our Lord
right.
2024.
Yeah,
It just
100%.
yeah.
And as such, what it ends up doing is censoring instead
Yes.
of actually doing anything to prevent undue influence on a court case or anything like that. What we've got here is something that says only one side of this can be presented, and any questioning of that is something that can potentially uh, result in penalties for journalists who do so. And the mere existence of the article has gotten Brits all up in arms, banned from the Lucy Letby subreddit, which is a thing, because they don't allow conspiracy
She's got her
theories.
own sub.
Yeah, there's a whole subreddit dedicated to Lucy Letby, but you can only post things about her guilt because of the no conspiracy theories policy. And
Oh,
anything that questions whether she's guilty is considered to be a conspiracy theory, which is wild. um,
incredible.
yeah. So I'm going to get into what this epic of an article says, but I did tell you I wanted to ask you a question outright because
Okay.
people are mad. And obviously, this being an American article, a lot of that ire is aimed at Americans for
Of
having the
course.
audacity to
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
shit we
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
about and things
Stay
like
in your
that.
own lane. Yeah.
Right. But as such, I wanted to ask the question, and I think frames a lot of our thoughts around like guilt in general when it comes to, and justice in general when it comes to people being arrested for heinous crimes. We tend to attach to the idea of someone being guilty, right? And
Yes.
once we've attached to that, we don't want that challenged. Even if it turns out we're wrong, it is
Yep.
very difficult to let go of that. So my question to you is, why do you think people can't have their view on Lucy Letby challenged? Why do they need her to be guilty?
Okay. So in this case, there's, and again, this is right off the top of my head, I'm speculating, I'm freewheeling here,
Sure,
right?
yeah, go for it.
You were quite right in that the fact that that article came from the States. How fucking you criticize our justice system, you
Right.
sons of bitches, you're still fucking electrocuting people to death.
Right.
How fucking dare you write your little article? How about you fuck off and stay in your lane and let us deal with our own child murderers? How about that? Huh?
Right, yeah,
There's
totally.
a huge amount of that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You've also got the fact that this is such an outlier of a crime. This simply doesn't happen. And someone has to answer, someone has to pay for it. And we've got our man, thank you. We've
Right.
This is done now. We need to be working on putting this behind us as opposed to dredging it up and keeping it live and keeping it current. Right?
Yeah.
Not only is the crime such a fucking random data point, such a freak occurrence, but it's a freak occurrence that happened in one of the most beloved and sacred of British institutions.
Right. Yep.
Right? This happened right at the fucking heart of our NHS. The victims were some of the most, if you're going to kill anyone, if you're going to kill someone and you kill a baby, for fuck's sake.
So we're not laughing at the babies.
We're not.
For some reason, Mark's computer decided to give us balloons right as he talked about murdering children.
Tim Apple needs to work on that. But look, it's an outlier of a crime, a heinous crime committed by the most unlikely of perpetrators,
right,
at the heart of our most sacred of institutions, at the, the most kind of unthinkable victims. All of that stuff together is something that I would say Britain wants to move the fuck on from. Every single area of that crime shouldn't have happened even once, let alone, is it 4 or 5 she's been charged with?
7.
So keeping it alive and suggesting that it isn't over yet. That is what I think would lead to ire.
Yeah, totally.
I think the same thing would have happened had the what are some of the other huge kind of British cases in history, the Jamie Bulger killings. If some American newspaper had written an article suggesting that maybe
maybe Sean Venables isn't so bad.
The same thing would have happened.
Right.
Harold Shipman, Fred West. You know what I mean? If I think the same thing with the Moors murders, you would have got the same reaction were any of these kind of huge, high profile X Factor fucking killings.
It's interesting you sort of put it that way, because I mean, the thing about all of those people that you just named is that we have a ton of concrete evidence of what they did.
Yes.
Right? We know what they did. I know me, I tend to be a little coldly analytical about things.
Yeah.
And so I have a tendency to not totally be able to relate to people's emotional takes on facts, right? Like, this is just an element of me. And I think about this a lot on Dateline, right? Where there will be someone who is like very clearly guilty, but their like family refuses to like nope, absolutely not, that didn't happen. Or vice versa. There'll be someone who it's like, became very clear the DNA didn't match, things like that. But, the family of the victim is like, nope, it is that person and I need them to be in jail. And I'm always like, why? Like, if it wasn't them, like, I don't feel better about like someone who wasn't them being punished. But I think to your point there is something about that, like wanting to have resolution because it's worse not to,
Yes.
so like you can't allow sitting in the idea that you're wrong
That is it.
because
That is
this
it. That
isn't
is exactly
resolved
it.
now.
We've
Yeah.
sorted this out. It's over.
Mm-hmm.
We've done it. We've put it to bed. We've got
Right.
someone for this.
Yeah, totally. So that,
That's
I think you're really onto something with that concept. And it's a thing that I don't personally relate to, but I think that, especially as sort of that's like an ethos that Britain especially is known for, right? The kind of like
of
keep
course.
moving forward and like,
Hmm.
let's not make a thing of it. Let's just, move on. And us dredging that up, even though this is a journalist, it's not the American government or things like
No, of
that,
course. And
is
it's hardly
certainly
dredging if it's something
right.
that's
Yeah.
actually happening now.
Right.
See, as well as which, um, if you fucking hell. If you open your mind to the possibility that as high profile and as flagrant a crime as this, which took place in plain sight,
Mm-hmm.
could lead to a wrongful conviction,
Mm-hmm.
right? Start pulling on that thread. Towards the end of last year, there was a guy by the name of Andrew Malkinson who had a conviction overturned
Mm-hmm.
after he'd spent 17 years in jail for rape,
Wow.
right, in the UK, and he was
Mm-hmm.
fucking exonerated fully and released
Happens
after
all the time.
17
Yeah.
fucking years of wrongful imprisonment.
Mm-hmm.
If you start to open your mind to the fact that, hang on, where does the thread lead?
Right.
If you
Yeah.
start to think this needs reform or this needs rethink,
Mm-hmm.
it's I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, but the world of 2024 bears no resemblance to the world, which saw these systems being kind of written up and brought into being.
Yeah. Very
Uh,
true. Very true.
I think it's a kind of a flamingo syndrome. Bury your fucking head, fingers in the ears. La 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 la. I can't hear you. Everything's fine. We've got her. We've got the nurse.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
Yeah.
The system works.
Right. Yes, exactly that. And in this case, the systems, right? Because you're talking about the
Hmm.
justice system and you're also talking about the NHS.
Yes.
So, you've got a lot of stuff at stake here. So let me just, I'm going to go through, I was going to like summarize some things. It's still going to take me a minute to get through. I'm not going to get through all of the alleged crimes or things like that, but give you enough to get a solid sense of what the doubts are here. And of course, we're not going to sit here and say, Lucy Letby is 100% innocent, absolutely without question, not guilty, because that would be doing like the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're sitting here with these facts in front of us. I think after reading this, I lean more towards she's probably not guilty.
Mm.
But I do everything in my power not to TikTok sleuth things. So
Yeah, of course. Of
we're
course.
not here to say that. What we are going to talk about is sort of, what it means to have this much reasonable doubt and these, especially compared to the narrative that people in the courts heard and the media heard and, what that says about our justice systems and things like that. So, uh, let's see, where was I going to go? So like, obviously, like I said, this is the kind of thing that I like to do and think about also when we talked about like the lady with the dingo a couple weeks
Yeah,
ago,
yeah.
right? That
Yes.
like, it's been 30 plus years, nearly 40 years or whatever, and you still thought that she murdered her baby, and
I did.
she would still be doing hard labor in the Australian outback if people hadn't started to question that narrative. So it's important to get into this, and we're going to do that. So for a little background, I want to read a quote from the author, Rachel Aviv, about how she came to this case. So she said, Clusi de Oliveira, an incredible researcher I work with, pointed me to the Letby case last spring when the trial was still underway. We were both struck by the fact that the case seemed to hinge almost entirely upon the belief that there had been too many deaths to have occurred by coincidence. The case made me curious about the way that our statistical intuitions play out in criminal investigations and trials, specifically the kinds of unexamined beliefs we have about the nature of chance and our tendency to attribute causality to random events. I was struck by the parallels between the Letby case and the case of Lucia de Burke, a nurse in the Netherlands who was wrongly convicted of murder in 2004, largely because of an association between her shift patterns and the deaths on her ward. Her case is now seen as one of the worst miscarriages of justice in Dutch history. So, she was seeing patterns herself here and decided to delve into it, which she did with incredible depth that even if we wanted to, we wouldn't be able to. She went through 7,000 pages of court transcripts, for example. But a fun fact about the British courts is that it costs about $100 for 1 day of court transcripts. And you need the judge's approval to get them. So she paid an exorbitant amount of money that is not accessible to the rest of us and spent about 6 months awaiting approval to look over this stuff, a thing appeals lawyers generally aren't even able to do because of the expense. So just think about that. Like, access to the kind of information that could help people get acquitted is nearly impossible for the people representing them because of the time and expense in order to acquire it.
You've answered a question I had kind of at the outset of this before we kind of started the topic. I mean, the article in question, the New Yorker article, has been kind of it's had peer review. Yeah, it's watertight. Okay.
Yeah. And it's incredible. We'll keep going with this. And like I said, it is, the unfortunate thing is it is one article, and as she points out in this, you can't make equivalent articles in the UK. And so it limits the amount that what she's doing here can be validated, because there was one journalist who was afraid to even post a picture of their New Yorker cover on Twitter because they were like, this might actually be illegal that I even acknowledge that this exists. So this is one of the reasons it's really hard to fact check or anything. Any of this, we know she delved into this and it's airtight journalistically, but British papers cannot address what is in this article.
Which is fucking mad, isn't it?
It's insane. Just absolutely unreal to me.
Every now and again, and I mentioned Pop Bitch a few weeks back. Every now and again, there'll be a politician or a celebrity or somebody notable who tries to squash a story about them and goes through the courts and takes out an injunction, and stops things getting published. But as I said a few minutes back, that is so out of fucking step with how news is distributed.
Right, 100%.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it's all very anachronistic to our times. But so on top of all of that, she went through notes and journals and texts and so on, many of which she had found had been taken horribly out of context by the press and were deeply mundane when situated amongst everything else. Everyone was essentially coming at this from the angle that Letby was a monster, and then using little bits and pieces to back that up, right? Just coming from that angle and then reading everything through that
making
lens.
the evidence fit.
Right. So what she tried to do, was remove the monster lens as she looked at this and go, okay, so who was this person actually without that? Basic facts, stripped of all the salacious bits, are that Letby worked in what Aviv describes as a struggling neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital in the west of England, where a cluster of 7 deaths occurred between June of 2015 and June of 2016. All of the babies, save for one, had been premature. 3 weighed less than 3 pounds and, had generally just gotten an inauspicious start to life. Letby was never seen, ever, by anyone harming a baby, and the coroner found no indications of foul play in any of these deaths. The central evidence of her guilt came from a diagram circulated by police, which Aviv describes thusly. Quote, on the vertical axis were 24 suspicious events, which included the deaths of the 7 newborns and 17 other instances of babies suddenly deteriorating. On the horizontal axis were the names of 38 nurses who had worked on the unit during that time, with X's next to each suspicious event that occurred when they were on shift. Letby was the only nurse with an uninterrupted line of X's below her name. Straight out of the gate, one of the things Aviv noticed was that in one of these cases, Letby wasn't there. They'd gotten that wrong, but it was never corrected, and the diagram continued to be circulated. Further, this chart insinuated that the only common factor was Letby, and didn't account for anything else that might have impacted mortality, including, the fact that these specifically are like severely underweight premature babies already. Letby, by all accounts, had nothing in her past to suggest that she was secretly yearning to end the lives of children. She'd wanted to be a nurse her whole life. People described her as kind, gentle, soft, joyful, and peaceful. She was as basic a bitch as you can imagine, who hung out with her girlies from the unit, loved wine and makeup, and was sad to have moved away from her family, but felt called to be where she was so she could work with babies. The unit itself was less put together than old Lucy. The head of the unit said that because of a lack of space and equipment, the risks of infection for the babies is greater the closer they are to each other. Aviv also noted that there were problems with the drainage system, the pipes in both the neonatal ward and the maternity ward often leaked or were blocked, and sewage occasionally backed up into the toilets and sinks. They were understaffed and only had one neonatologist working there. A year before Lucy's alleged murders, a newborn died when doctors trached a baby's esophagus instead of his trachea. Now, the lack of staff meant it took hours to get x-rays and blood tests, and that some staff were splitting their time with other parts of the hospital. Staff, especially Lucy, who lived on hospital grounds, were regularly doing extra shifts. Now, this right here is a big chunk from the article, but I'm going to read how these deaths started to you.
Go on.
In June 2015, 3 babies died at the Countess. First, a woman with antiphospholipid syndrome, a rare disorder that can cause blood clotting, was admitted to the hospital. She was 31 weeks pregnant with twins and had planned to give birth in London so that a specialist could monitor her and the babies, but her blood pressure had quickly risen and she had to have an emergency C-section at the Countess. The next day, Letby was asked to cover a colleague's night shift. She was assigned one of the twins, a boy who had been called Child A. The court order forbade identifying the children, their parents, and some nurses and doctors. A nursing note from the day shift said that the baby had had no fluids running for a couple of hours because his umbilical catheter, a tube that delivers fluid through the abdomen, had twice been placed in the wrong position and, quote, doctor's busy. A junior doctor eventually put in a long line, a thin tube threaded through a vein, and Letby and another nurse gave the child fluid. 20 minutes later, Letby and a third nurse a few feet away noticed that his oxygen levels were dropping and that his skin was mottled. The doctor who had inserted the long line worried that he had placed it too close to the child's heart, and he immediately took it out. But less than 90 minutes later, after Letby started her shift, the baby was dead. It was awful, she wrote to a colleague afterward. He died very suddenly and unexpectedly just after handover. A pathologist observed that the baby had crossed pulmonary arteries, a structural anomaly, and there was also a strong temporal relationship between the insertion of the long line and the collapse. The pathologist described the cause of death as unascertained. So a lot of medical issues here, none of which have anything to do with Lucy. She is like the least problematic part of this entire story. You have a doctor who may have put something in too close to the baby's heart. You've got a baby that is prematurely born from a mother who has some sort of disorder. You've got all of these different things happening with this child, and also Lucy with another person, never by herself with this baby. When they put in that IV or whatever, she's with another nurse. So she's never alone.
Am I
right
right in saying that there was also kind of a lot of theorizing and story changing from a consultant doctor on the case?
Yeah, well, there's 2 doctors who basically end up like dogs with a bone on this whole story, who are really dead set on making sure that it's connected to her. So we get more the next night when Lucy is also on duty. She helps another nurse with the IV bag for the surviving twin, who 25 minutes later starts displaying purple and blotchy skin and a drop in her heart rate. They're able to resuscitate this baby and she recovers, but the leader of the unit posited that it was the mother's disorder that left the twins in such a vulnerable state. absolutely makes sense. The next day, a woman with a dangerous placenta condition came in and gave birth to a boy weighing 1 pound, 12 ounces. The child developed pneumonia a few days later, and while Letby wasn't working in the ICU nursery at the time, she was called in to help. Unfortunately, the baby couldn't be saved. Again, Letby is there, but she's not the only one there, and the baby is seriously ill. It's under 2 pounds, and their unit actually wasn't really equipped to even deal with a baby with that low of a birth weight in the first place. It was just on the cusp of what they were even allowed to treat. Shouldn't have been in there. A few days later, a woman came in having noticed her baby wasn't moving as much inside her. She wanted antibiotics because she was afraid of an infection, but said that she felt forgotten by the staff who didn't give her the antibiotics and told her to wait. When the child was born by C-section, she was dusky and limp and wasn't given antibiotics for nearly 4 hours. When her oxygen alarm went off the next day, Letby came to help, but the baby got worse overnight and couldn't be saved. Pneumonia was found in the baby's lungs, and a pathologist said that the infection was likely present at birth. Again, this so clearly has nothing to do with her, who, devastated, texted her close friend and colleague saying, "We lost her." In fact, Lucy herself said that the circumstances should be investigated in that text to her friend because of the delay in the treatment, the antibiotics the child was given, and overall how chaotic the situation had been. So she was encouraging people to look into what the fuck was going on with the deaths of these babies. She wrestled with those deaths in the messages, saying that some of them seemed unavoidable, but that she couldn't get out of her mind the ones that didn't. She seemed heartbroken, and to everyone in the department, the sentiment was basically, thank God she was there. She's good in a crisis. Everyone liked her. In a tiny unit like that one, dealing with a host of emergencies, there was nothing at all strange about the same nurse being present for multiple deaths. Who else is going to be there? There's 7 people in this department. And she works all the extra hours because she lives on the campus and she doesn't have a partner or children. So she takes on all those extra hours that the other nurses can't. It was 4 months before another baby died, having been born at 27 weeks. Again, just barely in the circumstances that the unit would have treated. They weren't really equipped for a baby born that prematurely. She had an infection and a brain bleed at birth and was transferred to another hospital for 2 nights before they brought her back to Countess, where her condition worsened. According to the unit head, Stephen Brary, who was one of the 2 guys who ended up sort of getting fixated on Lucy, senior nursing staff were blaming the neonatal unit that sent back the baby, saying they hadn't been entirely honest, that they were just trying to clear a space. The baby's mother worried that the staff at the Countess were too busy to pay proper attention to her daughter. She recalled that a nurse named Nikki was sneezing and coughing whilst putting her hands in the baby's incubator. She added, to top it off, whilst Nikki was in the room, the doctor, who was seeing another baby, asked Nikki if she was full of a cold, to which she said, "Yeah, I've been full of it for days." So even the doctors were aware and didn't do anything. Again, when we sort of are thinking about like the institution here and where the blame would be laid if it weren't laid on Lucy.
Yes, and you mentioned the mortality rate while Lucy was employed, while Lucy was there. I also seem to remember the article making reference to a particular form of bias where no data was included from the periods before Lucy joined the team.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And further, and I'll get there, but it wasn't just within her unit either.
Right.
So yeah, lots of things to think about. But I think, in terms of now, as we're thinking about the framing of this, like, what is, your
very
thought
narrow,
before?
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, your thought before of like, we want to move past this, and this is the heart of a beloved institution and things like that. Everything so far is pointing to an institution that is fucking up at every step. And people do not want to hear that.
Overstretched.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
100%. So over a survey of over 1,000 staff members at that hospital was undertaken a year later, and 2/3 said that they felt pressured to come in even when they were sick. This is an institutional issue. Lucy was called in to help with the deteriorating baby while they awaited transfer to another hospital, but the child, who had been struggling to breathe, died. Letby was seen crying with another nurse, upset that this kept happening to her, and she wrote a card to the family of the child. But people did start talking about the fact that it did seem to be Lucy who was always on when the babies died, bringing it to senior management. Upon reviewing the cases, however, the manners of death were so different, there was no reason to think one person had caused them. Nothing in common with one another. Meanwhile, Lucy was so good at her job, other nurses looked to her for help, including once when she was in a salsa class and received several panicked calls from nurses asking her for help on giving a baby intravenous immunoglobulin treatment. Letby was flabbergasted that these people didn't have the know-how to do this and told another friend on the unit that it was chaos and a madhouse and that staffing need to be looked at. This didn't go unnoticed by others either. Many people in the hospital were pointing out how overworked the staff was and how little equipment they had to do their jobs, even things like incubators running out at times. Stretching everyone so thin was a recipe for disaster. So again, Lucy keeps on saying people need to start investigating this shit, which would be a weird thing to say if you were the person causing it. Right? Like you'd probably just let it go. Oh, shucks.
But right, so on that point specifically, could that also not be the tactics of a murderer to evade detection?
Like, I mean, I think obviously murderers try to be clever, you know, things like that, insert themselves into investigations and things like that. If no one is seeing any form of pattern between these deaths, it would be very silly to bring that to their attention. I would say, you know, like she'd have to be very stupid if that was the case, which we don't really have any indication that she's an idiot. So despite the jumps in deaths and Lucy's presence at them, most people were unconcerned that she was involved. But it did sort of get stuck in the craw of a couple of the staff. They shifted Lucy's shift from night to day, since most of the deaths happened at night, and there was more support during the day. 3 months later, in June of 2016, Lucy was warned by another nurse, her best friend, not to come in because of the absolute chaos on the unit. Quote, 5 admissions, 1 vent, she'd told Lucy in a text. Plus, a premature boy with hemophilia who looked like shit and whose oxygen levels had dropped overnight. Lucy took over care for that boy, and doctors tried to intubate him, but weren't able due to not having the right anesthesiology equipment. Lucy told a junior doctor that she wanted to... Sorry, I typoed and I don't even know what word it was supposed to be. Oh, that's icy. Lucy told a junior doctor that she wanted to cry after running around all day and not really achieving anything positive for him. A week later, a woman gave birth to triplets who were each supposed to have their own nurse, but Letby, fresh home from a holiday, was assigned to 2 of them and a third baby from another family, while also training a student nurse at the same time, who she said was clinging to her side the entire time. 7 hours into her shift, one of the triplets' oxygen levels dropped and he developed a rash. Lucy called for help and performed CPR, but the baby died. She was then assigned as nurse for the 2 surviving triplets the next day and found one of them had a distended abdomen, a potential sign of infection. She was so stressed she texted a friend that she didn't feel in the frame of mind to support the baby properly. The infant ended up on a ventilator and was later found to have a collapsed lung, perhaps from the pressure of the ventilator. The mother said she saw a doctor Googling inserting a line into the chest, a very basic procedure.
Fuck.
And another doctor was coughing and spluttering into her hands as she resuscitated the child. The baby died, and the mother said Letby seemed almost as upset as we were. The third triplet was taken to a hospital with better equipment and more competent staff where it survived. But Lucy, according to everyone around her, did everything by the book. Her work was above reproach. She was surrounded by incompetence, but she was doing her fucking best. And there are more. But listen, they go on and on like this. She's in charge of too many babies, expected to be in too many places at once. The place is a dirty fucking madhouse where people are coughing on premature babies. None of these babies were healthy when they got there. They had infections, they were underweight, they had breathing issues, etc. There was no reason for anyone at the time to suspect anything was wrong, except the 2 doctors, the head of the unit and the head of the department, who were like a dog with a bone on this. And they found in a postmortem x-ray that one of the babies had shown gas near the base of its skull, which is, it turns out, often the case when people die. You find gas in places like that. But one of them, Dr. Jayaram, was like, okay, sure, but this can also happen because of air embolisms, a horrifying situation in which air bubbles enter a person's veins or arteries and block blood supply. He became convinced that even though this had only happened 53 times recorded in history, and none of those times had it ever been a murder, this was definitely what Letby had done. And so she was effectively removed from her job, which she later filed a grievance about, saying that she'd essentially been let go without any real explanation as to why. Which, again, like, if you were killing babies and they let you go, like, I think you'd probably be like, oh, thank God they didn't press charges, instead of like, hey, let's look into that. Why was I
Yeah.
fired? Right?
And just to take up an opposing position, just to kind of explore this.
Yeah, do
that
it.
also could be a murderer trying
But
to seem less murdery.
yeah, that feels like TV murderer, right? Like this, like that feels like our, like, you know, our villain who's trying to outsmart people or whatever. But again, there's nothing in her pathology, like through her entire
Well,
life,
yeah,
that
exactly.
indicates that this is the kind of person that
Yeah.
she is, you know? And so adding on top of that, that like she keeps trying to push this stuff that, if they look into it further, is actually going to be bad for her. Like, what that says to me is that she certainly, even if she did it, she certainly didn't think that they thought she was a killer. So either she thought
Yeah,
she
I see.
covered her tracks really well, or she didn't do it. You know what I mean? Which, murderers thinking they covered their tracks beyond reproach is certainly a thing as well. But as it turns out, the hospital saw an influx of deaths in the maternity ward in 2015 as well, where Letby had not worked. A team from the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health concluded that it was an institutional problem. They needed more
Yeah.
nursing and medical staff. Further, there was no link between the deaths aside from gut feeling and simple
Yeah.
correlation, and
Yeah.
that these deaths were not materially different from others in neonatal units around the UK. And Letby's coworkers were roundly upset that she'd been removed from her duties. So outsiders came in to figure out what was going on and were like, there's nothing. There's a couple of guys who have decided this is a thing and emotionally are invested in it, but there's nothing to say that any of
Yeah.
this actually happened.
That's what that article really brought home. That
Mhm.
it seems to me that every single piece of evidence used to convict her was completely circumstantial.
Exactly. There's
Like
nothing
all of it.
at all. You know, she was with people for every one of these deaths, and you would think someone would have noticed her injecting air into a child at some point, you
Yeah.
know? um, like I said, the unit head and department head, Brary and Jairam, would not be deterred. As I said, air embolism is extremely rare, and the vast majorities of doctors on Earth would never have seen one. There's very little research on them as a result, and as such, it's also really easy to blame pretty much everything on it because we don't
Yeah.
know
It's a bogeyman.
exactly
Yeah.
what happens, right?
Yeah.
There's like someone who in the article who described the, like, he had never seen one, but there had been one at the hospital he worked at 20 years before he got there. And the description was basically like, you know, someone accidentally inserted air into a baby's stomach and the baby basically just dropped dead immediately. Um, and so, like, that seems to be like what actually happens. You pretty much immediately die upon an air embolism. But, you know, they had all these ideas about like, oh, well, maybe it makes you turn purple and makes your
Of
skin
course.
mottled, and maybe
Yeah.
it
Yeah. Yeah.
also causes a distended belly, you know, and it's like, how do we disprove that? Are you going to give someone an air embolism? Like, sure, maybe that's what happens. So let's skip forward to the damning post-its and all of that stuff in her house, knowing what we know now, all of these kind of contextual things, that this is a woman who has, you know, been in this crazy unit where she has been present at all these deaths. People are she's been removed from her job.
Yeah.
People are
Yeah.
starting to blame
It's
her
closing
for
in.
what happened. Right. So these notes said things like, not good enough, there are no words, I can't breathe, slander, discrimination, I'll never have children or marry, and perhaps most damningly, I killed them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them, and I am evil, I did this. On another piece of paper, she had written, I just want life to be as it was. I want to be happy in the job that I loved with a team who I felt part of. On another, she'd written, we tried our best and it wasn't enough. When asked about the notes, she said it was just a way of me getting feelings out onto paper. It just helps me process, which is deeply relatable to me as a journaler. I'd hate for people to read anything I've scrawled in a notebook, which is why I think, as I said last week, when I came across a bunch of my like 16-year-old journals in a storage thing, I just threw them away. Like, fuck that. Absolutely not. Nobody needs to see me process anything. She explained that she didn't really think she'd done anything wrong, but that she worried they'd find that she was at fault somehow by not being good enough, by not calling for help fast enough, or giving an improper dose of a medication or something like that. She said that the situation made her feel that others would see her as evil, as having done this on purpose. The notes weren't confessions. They were about processing how others would see her and the impact that this would have on her life. When she explained that she felt it was her fault if her practice wasn't good enough, and that's why she'd written the note about having done it on purpose, an officer said, you're being very hard on yourself there if you haven't done anything wrong. To which she responded, I am very hard on myself, which is absolutely true. We can see that from everything that we know about her and how much she overextended herself within that practice and everything to try to do things and how much she took all of this to heart. Her friends, family, patients, other professionals, they all came out to say that she'd been good at her job. But when it came down to speaking out as a character witness, people said that their support of her had already caused them problems socially and professionally, and that they didn't want to further damage themselves. There's so much to this, and I think that's probably enough to go through for now to give people a huge overview, but there's still more, and I've linked to the article in the description. As always, you should really read it. But listen, like I said, maybe she did it. You know, maybe she's everything they say. But this here is not how the media has talked about it, and this is not how the courts have talked about it. And everything has been presented in the worst possible bad faith context to create the image of a woman who somehow was a horrific homicidal monster, but hid even the vaguest hint of darkness from everyone around her and from herself. Until her spiraling out as a result of the accusations, it's not like she had diaries full of her deep, dark desires. We know she's a journaler. We know she writes notes, but there's nothing like this in her entire life. She'd never had these thoughts anywhere. And many of the nurses still side with her, which, of course, the head of the department, Brary, thinks is insane. Like, they're just not facing the truth. But when it really comes down to it, there is so much reasonable doubt here.
Oh, vast reasonable doubt. And one is left with the impression of somebody who's too fucking bland.
Right. Yes.
To string together a career of fucking, infanticide.
Yeah. Utterly guileless, this woman, and that seems like part of what makes it so easy to pin this stuff on her is just that she's not
blank.
Yeah, she's blank, right? And that creates almost this deeper evil to her as well. Like, oh, this, just under the guise of this blank canvas is this actual monster.
I occupy two conflicting points of view, which are unsatisfactory, in that I think she did it. I still believe that she's guilty, but the means by which she was convicted and sent down were dreadful.
Yeah. I mean, there's no, given the evidence we have, there is no evidence that she did this.
It's, completely. It's all circumstantial, but I find it to be overwhelmingly circumstantial.
How so? This is interesting to me because, the fact that there's literally nothing to connect her other than being there, which we have multiple accounts of people having had the same thing happen to them. I talked about a different guy when we talked about hospital horrors. Same thing had happened to. He just happened to be there when these people died, and he's still in prison for life for it. You have the woman that I talked about at the beginning that spawned this article in the first place, because of that miscarriage of justice. That same thing, she'd been in the presence of various deaths. So what is it about this that, despite there not being any evidence and all of her coworkers saying this did not happen and, you know, all of this stuff, what tells you she did this?
The general mortality rate, infant mortality across England and Wales in the NHS is around about 3.5 deaths per 1,000 live births. Right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
A room where she alone was the common factor had
She
7.
wasn't. Keep in mind, she wasn't the only common factor. She is a common factor, and not even the common factor in one of those that they said that she was there for.
Yeah. Um, the fact that a room that she was in had 7,
Sure.
when, like I said, the rate is 3.5 per 1,000 across the UK.
I don't know how
feels
many. Okay, how many were born in that unit? I don't know. So that may not be crazy in and of itself. But also, again, think of the circumstances. How many across I would bet that across the UK, there are some neonatal units that have higher
hotspots.
than others, right? Because just like here, you know, hospitals are underfunded in certain places. Places that minorities go to have higher death rates. You know, these are extremely vulnerable children. All of them were born almost dead already, right? So she can't have anything to do with that. She did not, whatever disorders the parents had, she didn't give that to them. She'd never seen them before. All born in situations that they shouldn't have been in a unit with 7 people attending in the whole unit. She's getting 3 babies at a time when she's supposed to have 1 to take care of, things like that. Like, so the common denominator is not just Lucy, again, because there's only 7 people who work in this. It's
the hospital
the
itself is a common
hospital is
denominator.
the
Yeah,
common
sure.
denominator, right? Like, you know, if you tell me I need to save babies and you put me in the room with a peanut butter sandwich and a chainsaw, like, I'm sorry, those babies are going to die, you know, like I can't do
Yeah.
anything about that.
It's and I don't know if this information is accessible,
Mhm.
but wouldn't it be interesting to note, has the mortality rate of the Countess of Chester changed?
Oh, I'm sure it has. I mean, you
Well,
think
yeah,
after this they're not going to fix shit? Like, you know, they're
run the fucking Hoover
absolutely,
around, yeah.
yeah, like they're not going to let the same things happen when they have the eyes of the entire country on them. But like I said, it was happening in other units as well. It wasn't just in the neonatal unit. The hospital on the whole was having a higher mortality rate than they normally had. So this was institutional. It wasn't simply in that ward. And like I said, she took on all the extra hours. So she was working like 20 hours a day. So there's only 4 hours that she would not have been there in a good chunk of the days. So yeah, she's going to be present all the time, you know, as these children are being born there who should not be being born there. All dying of completely different things, which means she is somehow changing her MO every single time, but not being caught for doing that. Like,
Yeah, I'm experiencing similar feelings to how I was when I read the article the first time.
right.
It's full of holes.
Full of them. And that's, I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. Like, this is, I'm curious just picking apart that based on this evidence or whatever, but I think you come to the right conclusion here is whether or not you think she did it personally.
Yes,
That's
yes.
not how the law should work. You
No,
know, that
listen,
like,
no arguments, of
yeah,
course.
there's no evidence. I
Mm,
have a gut feeling because
yes,
I made correlations, even though we know correlation does not equal causation. There were some connections that looked like a pattern, and therefore I can't
yes,
hear otherwise, right? Like, and that's where we kind of are with this, is that British people can't hear any of this. It'd be one thing for you to hear all of this and make up your mind, but you're not allowed to. And the
yeah.
justice system is running off of, you know, just vibes. To bring it back to that again, it is a vibes-based justice system, which we have here as well. Like that can't work. That's not how things should work. And that's really the
No.
bigger picture here than did Lucy Letby do it or not. It's that we don't have evidence she did this, and yet we're treating it like,
Yes, and the
she...
suggestion that something this big could have been fumbled, could have been
Mhm.
gone wrong.
Right.
I, certain as I am that there's one life, the knowledge and the reality that can be taken from you for nothing that you've done
Right.
is so unsettling.
Yes. 100%.
And to try and empathize and to try and inhabit that condition of being somebody doing a lot of time for one of the worst fucking things a human can do when you didn't fucking do it
Right.
is so dark
Right. Yeah.
and
It's really the
unforgivable.
worst
Yeah.
case scenario.
Yes.
Completely.
Yes. So yeah, can I understand somebody on Reddit from the UK getting fucking eggy
Right.
as an article suggesting that we've dropped a bollock on one of the most awful cases in our history? I can see why that might ruffle some feathers.
Yeah. It's an interesting sort of story because of that, like what it means larger and on a larger scale for society and questioning this kind of stuff, and then to just to have to think about what if we were wrong on this case, and what have we done, and then we've now allowed an institution to scapegoat an individual
Yeah.
in this way, knowing that the institution itself was the problem,
Yes.
and skirting that accountability by picking out a person. I mean, the fact that it's the head of the department and the head of the unit that are the ones that deeply drove this, while everyone else was saying she had nothing to do with this. Every outside reviewer, every internal reviewer, every colleague said she had nothing to
Yeah.
do this. But there's all these deaths, and the people in charge who would probably have to face the music for that went, no, it was
Lucy?
her.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, that's unsettling to think about. Like you said,
Yeah.
like that has to throw into like this sort of stark, um, I don't know, vision for you, like how easy it is for us to be stepped on under this system.
Yes. Yes. And again, you pull on that thread. Well, hang on. If it happened to her, wait
Right.
a fucking minute.
Yeah. Who else do we have to think about? What else do we have to think about? What are the deeper issues here? Can we move on, or do we have a big conversation?
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, I get the anger of the Redditors and I get why it's verboten to mention the article and I get why people might want to keep it that way.
Yeah, totally. But friends, if you have the time, read the whole article. Let us know what you think. Like I said, I'm as passionate as I always come across when I talk about anything. I am not saying she is for sure innocent. We don't have more information on this because the British press is not allowed to address it. So people can't expand upon what has been put here. So we have this to go off of, but what do you take from this? What are your takeaways on this case? Do you think she's guilty still? Do you think she's innocent? Anything that you take from this. I'm curious about your thoughts.
Or do you think perhaps you might be, even if you think there's even a small
Oh my
chance that you
goodness.
might be German Lars? Just pick,
Please let
pick the
us
fucking
know.
drop us a line, please. We'd love
Yeah,
to
we'll
talk to you.
help you. We'll help you figure it out.
We can bring you back. We can bring you back in.
Absolutely. And of
Somehow.
course, one thing you got to do once you figure out who you are.
Stay spooky.
That's right.